They say when a woman signs her name on divorce papers, she's ending something. But what if she's beginning it? Tonight, in a courthouse that smells like old wood and broken promises, Serafina Vale will put ink to paper and walk away from the man who destroyed her. Except he didn't destroy her. He freed her. And tomorrow morning, the city will wake up to discover that the quiet wife they pitied is actually the daughter of the most dangerous man alive. Stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Because what happens next? It's going to make you believe in second chances. The bloody kind. The rain hit the courthouse steps like bullets on concrete, each drop exploding into 1,000 smaller pieces before dissolving into the night. Serafina Vale stood at the top of those steps, one hand gripping the iron railing, the other clutching a manila envelope that held the end of everything she'd tried to build for the last 6 years. Her wedding ring was already gone. She'd taken it off in the bathroom 10 minutes ago, dropped it into the trash can next to a pile of crumpled paper towels and someone's half-eaten sandwich. No ceremony, no tears, just the hollow sound of metal hitting metal, and then silence. The courthouse was nearly empty now. It was past 9 at night, way past normal business hours, but her lawyer had called in a favor. Or more accurately, her father had made a phone call, and suddenly the family court clerk was willing to work late. That's how it worked in this city. You either had power or you didn't, and if you didn't, you learned to live in the spaces between other people's decisions. Serafina had been living in those spaces for years. She told herself it was love, that marrying Adrian Carr meant choosing something real, something untainted by the world she'd grown up in. He was a financial consultant, clean, normal. He wore suits that cost less than her father's watches and drove a sedan that he'd bought used. He didn't know about the bodies buried under construction sites or the judges who owed favors to Victor Vale. He didn't know that the woman he'd married at that courthouse wedding 6 years ago was anything other than a girl who'd cut ties with her family over irreconcilable differences. She'd sold him that story, and he'd bought it, until he hadn't needed it anymore. Until he'd found someone else. Someone whose last name didn't come with ghosts. The envelope in her hand was damp now, corners softening from the rain that kept coming down. Inside were the signed documents, her signature next to his, both of them agreeing that their marriage was irretrievably broken. Legal speak for what happens when a man stops coming home at night and starts smelling like perfume that isn't yours. She'd known for 3 months before she said anything. 3 months of watching him shower twice a day. 3 months of listening to him take phone calls in the other room, his voice going soft in a way it never did with her anymore. 3 months of pretending she didn't notice the hotel charges on their credit card bill, the ones from places 20 minutes from their apartment. When she finally confronted him, he didn't deny it. He looked relieved. "I need someone who doesn't have shadows," he'd said. They were in the kitchen. She was holding a wine glass. He was standing by the door, car keys already in his hand. You're too much, Sarah. Too quiet, too controlled. I feel like I'm living with someone who's always waiting for something bad to happen." She'd wanted to tell him that bad things did happen, that control wasn't optional when you grew up watching your father solve problems with violence, that quiet wasn't a personality trait. It was survival. But she didn't. She just set down the wine glass and asked if he wanted her to make it easy. He did, so here she was, free. The rain soaked through her coat as she walked down the steps, heels clicking against wet stone. The street was empty except for a single black car idling at the curb, headlights cutting through the downpour. She knew that car, knew the man sitting in the driver's seat, face hidden behind the rain-streaked windshield. Marcus had been with her father for 20 years. He didn't talk much, didn't need to. His job was simple: watch, wait, and report back. She wondered what he'd tell Victor tonight. Probably that she looked calm. That she walked out of the courthouse with her spine straight and her face empty. That she didn't cry. That would matter to her father. Victor Vale didn't tolerate weakness. She opened the car door and slid into the back seat, pulling the door shut against the noise of the rain. The interior was warm, quiet. Leather seats that smelled faintly of cigarettes and gun oil. Marcus glanced at her in the rearview mirror, his eyes pale and unreadable. "Home?" he asked. Serafina looked down at the envelope in her lap. The paper was disintegrating at the edges, ink starting to bleed. She thought about the apartment she'd shared with Adrian, The place they'd picked out together, the furniture they'd argued about, the bedroom where she'd lain awake for months listening to him breathe next to her and wondering when he'd stopped being hers. She didn't want to go back there. Not tonight. Maybe not ever. "My father's house," she said. Marcus nodded once and pulled away from the curb. The drive took 40 minutes. Out of the downtown core, through neighborhoods that got progressively quieter, houses that got progressively larger. By the time they turned onto the private road that led to Victor Vale's estate, the rain had slowed to a drizzle, mist hanging low over the trees that lined the driveway. The house, mansion really, sat at the end of a long gravel drive, lights blazing in every window like it was waiting for her. It was the kind of place that looked normal in magazines, the kind of place rich people retired to. Except Victor wasn't retired, and the men standing at the front entrance weren't gardeners. Marcus stopped the car near the steps. "He's in his office." "Of course he is," Serafina muttered. She got out, leaving the envelope on the back seat. Let Marcus deal with it. Let him file it away in whatever records her father kept on the parts of her life that didn't matter anymore. The front door opened before she reached it. Another guard, younger, newer. She didn't know his name. He stepped aside without a word, and she walked past him into the house she'd spent 18 years trying to escape. Inside, everything was exactly as she remembered. Dark wood. Expensive art that no one ever looked at. Silence that felt deliberate, controlled. The kind of silence that came from everyone knowing their place and staying in it. Her heels echoed on the marble floor as she walked toward the back of the house, toward the office where Victor spent most of his nights. The door was half open, light spilling out into the hallway. She could hear his voice, low, clipped, speaking to someone on the phone. "I don't care what he thinks he's owed. He gets what I decide to give him. End of conversation." A pause. "Then make him understand." The line went dead. Serafina pushed the door open the rest of the way and stepped inside. Victor Vale sat behind a mahogany desk that was older than she was, phone still in his hand, eyes already on her. He was in his late 50s, but he looked younger, lean, sharp, the kind of man who made other men nervous just by existing. His suit was dark, tailored perfectly. No tie. He never wore ties. He set the phone down slowly, deliberately. "It's done?" he asked. She nodded. "Good. That was it." No sympathy. No questions about how she felt or whether she was okay. Victor didn't deal in feelings. He dealt in facts. And the fact was, her marriage was over. He leaned back in his chair, studying her the way he used to when she was a kid, and he was trying to figure out if she was lying. "You look tired." "I am tired." "Then go upstairs. Your room's still set up." "I'm not staying." "Yes, you are." It wasn't a suggestion. Serafina felt the familiar tightness in her chest, the old instinct to push back, to remind him that she didn't live here anymore, that she'd built a life outside of his control. But the life she'd built was gone now, signed away in a courthouse that smelled like failure. She didn't have the energy to fight him. "Fine," she said. One night. Victor's mouth twitched, not quite a smile, but close. "We'll see." He stood, moving around the desk toward a cabinet against the wall. He opened it, pulled out a bottle of whiskey and 2 glasses, poured without asking if she wanted any. He handed her 1 glass and kept the other for himself. "Sit," he said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. She sat. They drank in silence for a minute, maybe 2. The whiskey burned going down, familiar and sharp. She'd stolen sips from this same bottle when she was 16, back when rebellion meant sneaking into her father's office and pretending she was brave enough to hate him. She wasn't brave, she was just angry, and anger was easier than fear. Victor set his glass down and looked at her, really looked at her, like he was seeing past the divorce and the rain-soaked coat and the careful mask she'd worn for the last 6 years. "You tried," he said quietly. "I'll give you that. You really thought you could make it work." "I did make it work," Serafina shot back. "For 6 years I made it work." "No." Victor shook his head. "You performed for 6 years. There's a difference." The words hit harder than they should have. She wanted to argue, to tell him he was wrong, that what she'd had with Adrian was real. But the truth sat heavy in her stomach, sour and undeniable. He was right. She'd been performing, playing the role of a woman who didn't come from blood and violence, and Adrian had believed it right up until he didn't need to anymore. I didn't come here for a lecture, she said, setting her glass down harder than necessary. Then why did you come here? Good question. She didn't have a good answer. Victor stood again, walked to the window that overlooked the back gardens. Rain streaked the glass, blurring the view. You came here because you don't know where else to go, because the life you built just collapsed, and you need something solid to stand on while you figure out what's next. He turned back to face her. I can give you that, but I'm not going to pretend this is temporary. You walked away from this world once, Serafina. You don't get to walk away twice. I'm not asking to come back. You don't have to ask. You're already back. His voice was calm, final. The second you signed those papers, you stopped being Adrian Carr's wife. You started being Victor Vale's daughter again. And that means something in this city. She wanted to hate him for saying it, but she couldn't, because he was right. Again. Victor moved back to his desk, opened a drawer, and pulled out a thin file folder. He set it on the desk between them, tapped it once with his finger. I have something for you, he said. Serafina stared at the folder. What is it? An opportunity. I don't want it. You don't know what you want yet. Victor's voice cut through her protest like a knife. You're still thinking like someone who has options. You don't. Not anymore. Adrian made sure of that. What are you talking about? Victor flipped open the folder, turned it so she could see. Inside were photographs, documents, bank statements, and Adrian's face smiling next to a woman Serafina had never seen before. Her stomach dropped. This is Monica Lang, Victor said, pointing to the woman in the photo. Daughter of Richard Lang. You know who that is? She did. Richard Lang owned half the commercial real estate in the city. He had ties to 3 different state senators and a federal judge. He was the kind of rich that didn't need to be loud about it. Adrian's been seeing her for 8 months, Victor continued. Not 3-8. And it wasn't just an affair, Sarah. He was positioning himself. Monica's father is looking for someone to manage his portfolio. Someone young, hungry, trustworthy. Adrian sold himself as exactly that. And part of the pitch, the fact that he was married to you. Serafina's hands went cold. What? He used you. Victor's voice was flat, emotionless. Told Richard Lang that being married to Victor Vale's daughter, estranged or not, gave him connections, access. He leveraged your name to get close to that family, and once he got what he wanted, he cut you loose. The room tilted. She'd thought Adrian left her because she wasn't enough, but he'd left because she'd served her purpose. You're lying, she whispered. Read the file. She didn't want to, but she did anyway. Every page was worse than the last. Emails between Adrian and Richard Lang, text messages between Adrian and Monica, dates, times, transactions. It was all there, proof that her marriage hadn't just ended. It had been a strategy, and she'd been too blind to see it. How long have you known? Her voice didn't sound like hers. 2 months. And you didn't tell me? You wouldn't have believed me. Victor closed the folder gently. You were still trying to make it work, still playing the part. I needed you to see it for yourself. She wanted to scream at him, wanted to throw the glass against the wall and walk out and never come back. But where would she go? Back to the apartment that smelled like Adrian's cologne? Back to the job she'd taken because it was safe and boring and nothing like her father's world? Back to a life that had never actually been hers? No, she was done running. What's the opportunity? She asked, her voice steadier now. Victor smiled, a real one this time, sharp and dangerous. His name is Dante Rourke. The name landed like a punch. Everyone knew Dante Rourke. He was the kind of man people didn't talk about directly. They referenced him, alluded to him, spoke around him like saying his name too loudly might summon something they weren't ready for. He controlled the east side of the city, ports, shipping, everything that moved through water. He had alliances with people Victor did business with, but they'd never worked together directly. Different spheres, different rules. And he was dangerous. Not the way Victor was dangerous, calculated, cold, strategic. Dante Rourke was dangerous the way a loaded gun was dangerous, controlled until he wasn't. What about him? Serafina asked carefully. Victor leaned forward, elbows on the desk. He's been asking about you. Her pulse kicked up. Why? Because he saw you. Once. 3 years ago. at a meeting I had with some of his associates. You were here for the weekend, remember? You came downstairs for coffee, didn't say a word to anyone, and left. She didn't remember. 3 years ago, she'd still been trying to pretend her father's world didn't exist. He asked who you were, Victor continued. I told him you were off limits, that you'd chosen a different life. He respected that, but he never forgot. And now? Now you're not off limits anymore. The implication hung in the air between them, heavy and undeniable. You want me to, what? Meet him? I want you to marry him. The words hit like a slap. Serafina stood so fast her chair scraped backward. You can't be serious. I'm always serious. I just signed divorce papers 3 hours ago. Exactly. Victor stood too, matching her intensity. 3 hours ago, you were Adrian Carr's mistake. Tomorrow morning, you can be Dante Rourke's asset, his partner, his equal. I'm not a bargaining chip. No. You're my daughter, and you're worth more than whatever Adrian Carr thought he could trade you for. Victor's voice went quiet, almost gentle. Dante doesn't want you because of me, Serafina. He wants you because of you. He's been waiting 3 years for the chance to even speak to you again. And now he can. She couldn't breathe. This was insane. He's expecting you tomorrow, Victor said. Noon. His office downtown. I've already arranged the meeting. I haven't agreed to anything. Then go tell him no. Victor shrugged. But before you do, ask yourself something. Do you really want to go back to being nobody? Or do you want to find out what it feels like to be the most dangerous woman in this city? The question sat in her chest like a stone. She thought about Adrian, about Monica Lang and Richard Lang and the apartment she didn't want to go back to, about 6 years of pretending she was small enough to fit into someone else's life. She thought about the courthouse steps and the rain and the wedding ring and the trash can. And she realized something. She didn't want to be small anymore. What time? She asked. Victor's smile was slow, satisfied. Noon. Don't be late. The next morning came too fast. Serafina woke up in her old bedroom, sunlight cutting through curtains she'd picked out when she was 17. The bed was the same. The desk was the same. Even the books on the shelf were the same, frozen in time, waiting for a version of her that didn't exist anymore. She showered, dressed in the only clean clothes she had, black slacks, a white blouse. Nothing special. She didn't have anything special here. All her clothes were back at the apartment, packed into a closet she'd have to clean out eventually. But not today. Today, she had a meeting with Dante Rourke. Marcus drove her downtown, the same silent presence he'd been the night before. They didn't talk. She didn't ask where they were going. She just watched the city slide past the window. Gray buildings, crowded streets, people who had no idea what kind of world existed in the spaces between their normal lives. The car stopped in front of a high-rise on Fifth Avenue. Sleek, modern, glass and steel. The kind of building that housed law firms and hedge funds and people who made money by moving numbers around on screens. Dante Rourke's office was on the 40th floor. Marcus didn't get out of the car, just looked at her in the rear-view mirror and said, "He's expecting you." She nodded, stepped out onto the sidewalk, and walked into the building alone. The elevator ride up felt longer than it should have. Her reflection stared back at her from the mirrored walls, pale, composed, unreadable. She looked like someone who knew what she was doing. She didn't. The elevator doors opened into a lobby that was all clean lines and muted colors. A receptionist sat behind a desk made of dark wood and chrome, eyes flicking up as Serafina approached. Name? Serafina Vale. The receptionist's expression didn't change, but something shifted in her posture. Recognition, maybe. Or fear. He's waiting for you. Last door on the left. Serafina walked past the desk, down a hallway lined with abstract art that probably cost more than most people made in a year. Her heels were too loud on the polished floor. She felt exposed, visible in a way she hadn't felt since she was 18, and trying to figure out how to exist outside her father's shadow. The door at the end of the hall was open. She stopped just outside, heart hammering against her ribs. Inside, she could see him. Dante Rourke stood near the window, hands in his pockets, looking out over the city like he owned it. Maybe he did. He was taller than she'd expected. Broader. He wore a dark suit that fit him like armor. No tie, collar open at the throat. His hair was black, cut short, and even from behind she could feel the weight of his presence. the kind of gravity that pulled everything toward it whether you wanted it to or not. He turned before she could decide whether to knock, and the world narrowed to just him. His eyes were dark, almost black, sharp enough to cut. His face was all hard lines and controlled power, the kind of face that didn't smile unless it meant something. There was a scar along his jawline, faint but visible, a reminder that whatever he'd built hadn't come easy. He looked at her the way a predator looks at something it's been tracking for miles. Not hungry, patient. "Serafina Vale," he said. His voice was low, rough, the kind of voice that didn't need to be loud to be heard. "You're late." She glanced at her watch. It was 12:02. 2 minutes, she said. "Still late." She stepped into the office, let the door close behind her. "If 2 minutes is a problem for you, this meeting's going to be very short." His mouth twitched, not quite a smile. "Your father said you had a spine. Good. I don't have time for people who don't. And I don't have time for people who waste mine," she shot back. "So why am I here?" Dante moved away from the window, crossing the room until he was close enough that she had to tilt her head back slightly to hold his gaze. He didn't touch her, didn't crowd her, but she felt the proximity like heat. "You're here," he said quietly, "because your father thinks we'd make a good match. And I'm here because I've been waiting 3 years for the chance to find out if he's right." Her breath caught. "You don't even know me." "I know enough." His eyes didn't leave hers. "I know you walked away from this world to marry a man who didn't deserve you. I know you spent 6 years trying to be someone you're not, and I know that as of last night you're done pretending. How do you... I make it my business to know things." He took a step back, giving her space to breathe. "Your father told me you signed the papers, that you're free, and that you might be interested in a different kind of arrangement." An arrangement. Marriage. The word hung between them, blunt and unavoidable. Serafina's pulse roared in her ears. "You can't be serious." "I'm always serious. You don't know anything about me. Not really. And I sure as hell don't know anything about you." "Then let me tell you." Dante moved to his desk, leaned against it, arms crossed. "I don't do relationships the way normal people do. I don't chase. I don't court. I don't waste time on things that don't matter. What I do is simple. I see what I want. I make an offer, and I follow through." "And you want me?" "Yes." No hesitation, no pretense. Just the truth, delivered like a knife. "Why?" she asked. "Because you're the only woman I've ever met who looked at a room full of dangerous men and didn't flinch." His voice dropped lower. "Because you're Victor Vale's daughter, which means you understand how this world works. And because 3 years ago I saw you for 30 seconds, and I haven't been able to forget it." Her hands were shaking. She hid them behind her back. "That's not a reason to get married." "No," Dante agreed. "But power is. Protection is. Partnership is. I'm not offering you romance, Serafina. I'm offering you something better. A place at my side. Equal footing. Respect. And what do you get? You." The simplicity of it was almost worse than if he'd lied. She didn't know what to say, didn't know what to feel. Dante straightened, closing the distance between them again. This time he reached out, slowly, deliberately, and took her left hand. His touch was warm, firm. He turned her hand over, ran his thumb across the pale line where her wedding ring used to be. "I'm not him," Dante said quietly. "I won't lie to you. I won't use you. And I sure as hell won't leave you. You don't know that." "Yes, I do." His grip tightened slightly. "Because when I make a promise, I keep it. And the promise I'm making you right now is this. If you say yes, you become untouchable. Anyone who hurts you answers to me. And I don't make threats, Serafina. I make consequences." She should have been terrified. She should have walked out. But standing there, looking up at a man who made the entire city hold its breath, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Safe. Not because he was soft, but because he was exactly as dangerous as he claimed to be. "I need time," she said. "You have 24 hours. "That's not 24 hours, Dante repeated. "After that, the offer expires. Not because I'm impatient, but because if you can't decide whether you want power in 24 hours, you don't actually want it." He released her hand, stepped back. "Your father's driver is waiting downstairs. He'll take you wherever you need to go. Think about it. And tomorrow, same time, you come back here and tell me yes or no." She turned toward the door, legs unsteady. "Serafina." She stopped, looked back. Dante stood in the center of his office, hands in his pockets again, eyes locked on hers. "I meant what I said. You're worth waiting for, but I'm done waiting." She didn't trust herself to respond, so she walked out, got in the elevator, rode it down to the lobby in silence. And when she stepped out onto the street, the city felt different, sharper, louder, like it was waiting to see what she'd choose. Marcus was still parked at the curb, engine running. She climbed into the back seat, closed the door. "Where to?" he asked. Good question. She could go back to the apartment, pack her things, start over somewhere new, somewhere quiet, somewhere far away from Victor and Dante and the entire blood-soaked world they lived in. Or she could stop running. "Take me to my father's house," she said. And as Marcus pulled away from the curb, Serafina looked down at her left hand, at the pale line where Adrian's ring used to be, and made her decision. Not because she loved Dante Rourke, but because she was done being the woman men underestimated. Tomorrow, she'd go back to that office. And she'd say yes. The house felt different when she walked back in. Or maybe she was the one who was different. Serafina moved through the hallways like a ghost returning to a body it had abandoned years ago. Everything was familiar. The weight of the silence, the smell of expensive wood and older money, the way sound seemed to die before it could travel too far. But now it didn't feel like a trap. It felt like armor she'd forgotten she owned. Marcus had dropped her at the front entrance without a word, and she'd walked in to find the house empty of her father. A guard near the kitchen told her Victor was out. Business across town, wouldn't be back until late. Good. She needed time to think without his voice in her head, telling her what she already knew. She went upstairs to her old room and sat on the edge of the bed, hands folded in her lap, staring at nothing. 24 hours. That's what Dante had given her. It should have felt like pressure, like a countdown to something she wasn't ready for. But instead, it felt like clarity. She'd spent 6 years living in the space between who she was and who she was pretending to be. 6 years of waking up next to a man who thought he knew her, who thought he'd saved her from something dark and dangerous. And the whole time she'd been performing, playing the role of the girl who got out, who chose love over legacy, who believed normal was better than powerful. And where had that gotten her? Divorced at 28, used as a stepping stone by a man who'd never actually wanted her, just the access her last name provided. Discarded the second he didn't need her anymore. She thought about Monica Lang, about the way Adrian had probably talked about her to that family. "My wife's father is Victor Vale." Yes, that Victor Vale. "We're estranged, but blood is blood, you know? Connections run deep." He'd traded on her name while making her believe she was finally free of it. The anger came then, slow and cold, settling in her chest like ice. Not the hot, desperate anger she'd felt when she first found out about the affair. This was something else. This was the kind of anger that didn't scream. It planned. She stood, walked to the window, looked out over the back gardens. The rain had stopped sometime during the night, and now the sun was trying to break through the clouds, light catching on wet leaves and stone pathways. Dante's face came back to her. Those dark eyes, that scar along his jaw. The way he'd looked at her like he'd been waiting years for permission to do exactly that. "I'm not offering you romance. I'm offering you something better." He was right. Romance was what got her here. Romance was Adrian whispering sweet things while building his exit strategy. Romance was believing that love could exist separate from power, that you could choose one without the other. But power didn't lie. Power didn't leave. Power just was. And if she was honest with herself, if she stripped away all the pretense and the fear and the desperate need to be someone other than Victor Vale's daughter, she wanted it. Not because her father wanted it for her, but because she was tired of being small, tired of apologizing for the blood in her veins, tired of pretending she didn't know how to survive in a world that ate people like Adrian Carr for breakfast. She pulled her phone from her pocket, stared at the screen. No messages. Adrian hadn't texted since the day she'd confronted him, hadn't called, hadn't asked if she was okay or where she was staying or whether she needed anything. He was already gone, already building his new life with Monica Lang and her father's money and whatever story he'd tell about the wife he'd left behind. Fine, let him. She opened her contacts, scrolled to a name she hadn't called in 3 years. Her finger hovered over it for a second. Then she pressed dial. It rang twice before a woman's voice answered, sharp and suspicious. "Who is this?" "It's Sarah." Silence. Then, "Holy shit, Sarah!" Despite everything, Serafina felt her mouth twitch into something almost like a smile. "Hey, Carmen." "You wait, hold on." There was rustling on the other end, the sound of a door closing. When Carmen spoke again, her voice was lower, more controlled. "You haven't called me in 3 years. What's going on? Are you okay?" Carmen Rivera had been Serafina's best friend growing up. They'd met when they were 12, both daughters of men who ran the city from the shadows. Carmen's father controlled the West Side, everything from construction to waste management to the union votes that decided elections. She and Serafina had understood each other in a way no one else could, both trying to be normal, both failing. They drifted apart when Serafina married Adrian. Not because of a fight, just because their lives had gone in different directions. Carmen stayed in the world they'd grown up in. Serafina tried to leave it. "I'm fine," Serafina said. I need to talk to someone who isn't my father." "Is this about the divorce?" Of course Carmen knew. Everyone knew. In this world, information moved faster than blood. "Yeah," Serafina admitted. "It's about that, and some other things." "Where are you?" "My father's house." Another pause. "You went back." "Temporarily." "Sarah, nothing with Victor is temporary." Carmen's voice gentled slightly. "You know that." "I know." "So what's going on?" Serafina closed her eyes, tried to figure out how to explain. "He wants me to marry Dante Rourke." The silence on the other end was so complete she thought the call had dropped. Then Carmen laughed, short, sharp, almost hysterical. "Jesus Christ, he doesn't waste time, does he?" "You know about Dante?" "Everyone knows about Dante, he's—" Carmen stopped. "Wait, are you actually considering it?" "I don't know. Maybe." "Maybe?" "Sarah, the guy's a goddamn hurricane in a suit. He doesn't date, he doesn't do normal. He just takes what he wants and destroys anything that gets in his way." "So I've heard. And you're thinking about marrying him?" "He made me an offer. Partnership, protection, power." Carmen was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her tone had shifted. Less shock, more understanding. "What did Adrian do?" Serafina told her. All of it. The affair, the timeline, Richard Lang, the way Adrian had used her name to build connections and then discarded her the second he didn't need them anymore. By the time she finished, Carmen was swearing steadily under her breath. "That piece of shit. I never liked him, you know that? Always thought he was too clean, too eager, like he was trying too hard to prove he wasn't part of our world." "He wasn't part of our world," Serafina said quietly. "That's why I married him." "Yeah, and look how that worked out." Carmen sighed. "Okay, so Dante, you met with him?" "This morning." "And?" "And I have 24 hours to decide." "That's very him. No pressure, just a ticking clock and the weight of the entire city watching to see what you do." Carmen paused. "What do you want to do?" The question hit harder than it should have. What did she want? Not what Victor wanted, not what Dante wanted, not what the world expected from a woman who'd just signed divorce papers and walked back into her father's house. What did she want? "I want to stop being afraid," Serafina said. "I want to stop apologizing for who I am. And I want everyone who ever underestimated me to regret it." "Then say yes." "It's not that simple." "Yeah, it is." Carmen's voice was firm now, the same tone she used to use when they were kids and Serafina was overthinking things. "You're making it complicated because you still think you're supposed to want something else. Some kind of normal life with a normal guy who doesn't know what your father does for a living. But that's not you, Sarah. It never was. You tried to make it you and it almost broke you." "I'm not broken." "No, but you're tired. I can hear it." Carmen softened again. "Dante's dangerous. Everyone knows that. But he's also the most powerful man on the East Side. And if what your father says is true, if Dante's been waiting for you, then he's not going to treat you like Adrian did. He's not going to use you and throw you away. Men like Dante don't do temporary." Serafina pressed her forehead against the cool glass of the window. What if I can't do it? What if I'm not strong enough for that world anymore? You were born in that world. You didn't leave it. You just took a vacation. Carmen's voice went hard. And now vacation's over. Time to come home. The words settled in Serafina's chest like a key turning in a lock. Time to come home. I'll call you tomorrow, Serafina said. You better. I want details. All of them. Deal. She hung up, set the phone on the windowsill, and stood there until the sun finally broke through the clouds and the gardens below turned gold. Tuck. Victor came home just after midnight. Serafina was still awake, sitting in the library downstairs with a book she wasn't reading. She heard the front door open, heard his footsteps in the hall, heard him speaking quietly to one of the guards. Then he appeared in the doorway, suit jacket gone, sleeves rolled up, looking more tired than she'd seen him in years. He took one look at her and stopped. You're still up? Couldn't sleep. He moved into the room, poured himself a drink from the bar in the corner. He didn't offer her one this time. Just stood there, glass in hand, studying her like she was a problem he was trying to solve. You went to see him, Victor said. Not a question. Yes. And? And I'm thinking about it. Victor's expression didn't change. That's not what I asked. Serafina closed the book, set it aside. What do you want me to say? That I'm going to marry a man I don't know because you think it's a good strategy? I think it's more than strategy. Victor moved to the chair across from her, sat down heavily. I think it's the only move that makes sense right now. For who? For you? For you. His voice was sharp now, cutting. You think I set this up for myself? I don't need Dante Rourke. We operate in different territories. Our business doesn't overlap. This isn't about me expanding power. This is about you not getting buried by what Adrian did. She frowned. What are you talking about? Victor took a long drink, set the glass down on the side table. Richard Lang is already moving. He's telling people that you were the problem in the marriage, that Adrian left you because you were unstable, controlling, that you used your father's name to threaten him. The air left her lungs. That's not... It doesn't matter if it's true. Victor's eyes were cold, flat. What matters is that people believe it. And they will, because Richard Lang has more reach than you do right now. By the end of the week, your name is going to be mud. Every door you might have walked through on your own is going to close. And you know what happens then? She didn't want to know, but he told her anyway. You become irrelevant, just another woman who married badly and paid the price. And in this city, irrelevant means invisible, which means vulnerable. Her hands were shaking again. She pressed them flat against her thighs, forced them still. So this is about damage control. This is about survival. Victor leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Dante Rourke's name carries weight. The second you marry him, Richard Lang's story falls apart. Because no one's going to believe Dante married some unstable, controlling woman. They're going to believe he married someone worth having, someone powerful. So I trade one transaction for another. No. You trade uncertainty for certainty. You trade vulnerability for protection. And you trade Adrian Carr's narrative for your own. Victor's voice softened, just slightly. I'm not telling you to love him, Serafina. I'm telling you to choose yourself, for once. The words hit like a slap. Because he was right. She'd chosen Adrian because she thought it would save her from becoming what her father was. But it hadn't saved her. It had just made her smaller. I need to know something, she said quietly. Does Dante know? About what Adrian's doing? About Richard Lang's story? Victor nodded. He knows. And he still wants to marry me. He doesn't care what Richard Lang says. He cares about what he wants. And what he wants is you. Serafina stood, moved to the window. The gardens were dark now, just shadows and moonlight. What if I can't be what he needs? Then you figure it out, together. Victor stood too, came to stand beside her. I've known Dante for 10 years. He's ruthless. He's dangerous. But he's also loyal. And when he commits to something, he doesn't break. If he says he'll protect you, he will. Even from me, if it comes to that. She looked at her father, really looked at him, and saw something she didn't expect. Concern. Not the cold, strategic kind, the real kind. You want this for me, she said. Not for you. I want you to stop running. His voice was rough. I want you to stop pretending you're something you're not. And I want you to have the kind of power that means no one can ever hurt you again. Her throat tightened. She'd spent so many years thinking her father only saw her as an asset, a piece on a board he was playing. But maybe she'd been wrong. Maybe he just didn't know how to love her in a way that didn't look like control. I'll give him my answer tomorrow, she said. Victor nodded once. Good. He left the room, footsteps fading down the hall. And Serafina stood there in the dark, staring at her own reflection in the window, and tried to recognize the woman looking back. The next morning, she woke up before dawn, couldn't stay in bed, couldn't sit still. She dressed in the same clothes from the day before, black slacks, white blouse, and went downstairs to find Marcus already waiting by the car. It's 5:30, she said. I know. The meeting's not until noon. I know that too. She almost smiled. My father told you to be ready early. Your father tells me a lot of things. Marcus opened the back door, waited. Serafina got in. Where do you want to go? He asked. She thought about it. About the apartment she still hadn't gone back to. About the life she'd built that was already disintegrating. The apartment, she said. I need to get my things. Marcus nodded and pulled away from the house. The drive took 30 minutes. By the time they parked outside the building she'd called home for 6 years, the sun was just starting to rise, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. She hadn't been back since the night she'd confronted Adrian, 2 weeks ago. It felt like years. She took the elevator up to the 4th floor, used her key to open the door, and stepped inside. The apartment smelled wrong. Not like home, like someone else's life. Everything was exactly as she'd left it. The couch they'd picked out together, the coffee table with the stack of magazines she never read, the kitchen where she'd made breakfast every Sunday morning, trying to pretend they were a normal couple doing normal things. It was all still here, but it felt dead. She walked through the living room, down the hall to the bedroom. The bed was unmade. Adrian's side was empty, sheets pulled back like he'd just gotten up. But she knew he hadn't slept here in weeks, probably staying with Monica now, probably already moved on. Her clothes were still in the closet. She pulled out a suitcase from the top shelf, started packing. Grabbed the things that mattered. The blazer she'd worn to her first real job interview. The dress she'd bought for a work event where she'd actually felt confident. The boots that had carried her through 6 winters of pretending she was fine. She left everything Adrian had bought her, left the jewelry, the perfume, the stupid decorative pillows he'd insisted looked good on the bed. She didn't want any of it. It took 20 minutes to pack everything she cared about. 20 minutes to erase 6 years. She was zipping up the suitcase when she heard the front door open. Her heart stopped. Footsteps in the hallway. Then Adrian's voice, casual and easy, like nothing had changed. Sarah, that you? She didn't answer, just stood there, suitcase in hand as he appeared in the bedroom doorway. He looked good. That was the worst part. He looked rested, happy, like the divorce had been the best thing that ever happened to him. I didn't think you'd come back, he said. I'm just getting my things. He glanced at the suitcase, then back at her. You could have called. I would have packed them for you. I didn't want you touching my things. Something flickered across his face. Guilt, maybe, or annoyance. Sarah, come on, don't be like that. Like what? Cold. She almost laughed. You cheated on me for 8 months. You used my name to get close to Richard Lang, and now you're upset that I'm cold? Adrian sighed, ran a hand through his hair. I didn't use you. Yes, you did. I mentioned your father once, maybe twice, that's it. You built your entire pitch around being connected to my family. That's not... He stopped. Who told you that? Does it matter? Your father. Adrian's jaw tightened. Of course. Victor's been digging into my life. Can't just let you move on, can he? Has to control everything. He's not controlling anything. He's just showing me the truth. His version of the truth. The version with receipts. She moved toward the door, suitcase in hand. Get out of my way. Adrian didn't move. Where are you going? None of your business. You're going back to him, aren't you? Back to Victor's world. That's what this is about. This is about you being a liar. I never lied to you. You lied every single day. Her voice was rising now, control slipping. You told me you loved me. You told me we were building something real, and the whole time you were just using me to get ahead. That's not fair. Fair? She laughed, sharp and bitter. You want to talk about fair? You left me, Adrian. You chose someone else. You don't get to stand here and act like I'm the one who did something wrong. I left because you were never really here. His voice cracked. You were always somewhere else, always holding something back. I spent 6 years trying to get close to you, and it was like hitting a wall. You never let me in, Sarah. Not really. Because you didn't deserve to be let in. The words came out before she could stop them. Adrian flinched, and for a second she saw it. The hurt underneath the defensiveness. The man who'd actually believed they could make it work. But she couldn't feel sorry for him. Not anymore. I gave you 6 years, she said quietly. I tried to be what you wanted, and it still wasn't enough. So don't stand there and tell me I didn't let you in. You just didn't like what you found. Adrian looked at her for a long moment. Then he stepped aside. Fine. Go. Run back to your father. Marry whoever he tells you to marry. But don't pretend you're doing it for yourself. You're doing it because you don't know how to exist without someone telling you who to be. The words were designed to hurt. And they did. But not the way he thought. Because he was wrong. She wasn't going back to her father's world because she didn't know who to be. She was going back because she finally did. Goodbye, Adrian, she said. And she walked out, down the hall, through the living room, out the door. She didn't look back. Marcus was waiting by the car, expression unreadable. He took the suitcase from her, put it in the trunk, opened the door. She slid into the back seat, hands shaking, heart pounding. You okay? Marcus asked. Drive. He did. And as the apartment building disappeared behind them, Serafina felt something break loose in her chest. Not grief, relief. She was done. At 11:45, Marcus pulled up in front of Dante's building. Serafina had changed clothes at her father's house. A black dress this time, simple and elegant, the kind of thing that didn't apologize for existing. She'd done her makeup carefully, fixed her hair, tried to look like someone who knew what she was doing. She still felt like she was about to jump off a cliff. But maybe that was the point. She rode the elevator up to the 40th floor, walked past the receptionist who recognized her this time, made her way down the hall to Dante's office. The door was open. He was standing by the window again, same position as yesterday, like he'd been waiting there the entire 24 hours. He turned when she entered, looked at her the way he had before, patient, predatory, certain. You're early, he said. 15 minutes. I'll allow it. She closed the door behind her, moved into the center of the room. Her heart was a drumbeat against her ribs. I have conditions, she said. Dante's mouth curved slightly, not quite a smile. I'd be disappointed if you didn't. I'm not a trophy. I'm not going to stand around looking pretty while you run your business. If we do this, I'm part of it. Equal partner. Agreed. I don't want romance. I don't want grand gestures or promises you can't keep. I want honesty, even when it's ugly. Done. And if this doesn't work, if we figure out we can't stand each other, I walk away. No strings, no threats, no consequences. Dante moved toward her, slow and deliberate. He stopped close enough that she could feel the heat of him, see the way his jaw tightened as he considered her words. No, he said. Her breath caught. No? The first two, yes. The third one, no. His voice was low, absolute. I don't do temporary, Serafina. I told you that. When I commit, I commit. So if you walk into this marriage, you're walking in all the way. No exit clause. No safety net. That's insane. That's the deal. She should have said no, should have walked out. But standing there, looking up at a man who refused to give her an easy way out, she realized something. She didn't want easy. Easy had gotten her Adrian. Easy had gotten her 6 years of pretending. Easy had left her divorced and discarded. She wanted something real, even if real meant terrifying. Okay, she said. Dante's eyes darkened. Okay? Yes. I'll marry you. For a second, neither of them moved. Then Dante reached out, took her left hand again, ran his thumb over the pale line where her wedding ring used to be. We're doing this right, he said. No courthouse, No quiet ceremony. Everyone's going to know. I don't need a big wedding. This isn't about what you need. It's about what they need to see. His grip tightened slightly. The second we're married, you're under my protection. That means Richard Lang's story dies. That means your ex-husband becomes irrelevant. That means no one touches you without going through me first. When? 2 weeks. Her pulse jumped. That's not enough time. It's plenty of time. Dante released her hand, moved back to his desk. He opened a drawer, pulled out a small black box. I had this made 3 years ago, after I saw you the first time. He opened the box. Inside was a ring, not delicate, not subtle, a black diamond set in platinum, flanked by smaller stones that caught the light like shards of ice. It was beautiful. It was terrifying. It was exactly right. Dante took it out of the box, held it up. Give me your hand. She did. He slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. 2 weeks, he said again, and then you're mine. The word should have felt like a cage. Instead, it felt like a promise. She looked down at the ring, at the way it gleamed against her skin, heavy and certain. Okay, she whispered. Dante stepped closer, tilted her chin up with one finger. His eyes were so dark she could see herself reflected in them. I meant what I said yesterday. Anyone who hurts you answers to me, and I don't make threats. I make consequences, she finished. I remember. His mouth curved into something that was almost a smile. Then he let her go. Go home. Tell your father. We'll announce it tomorrow. She nodded, turned toward the door. Serafina. She stopped. You made the right choice. She didn't know if that was true, but she knew it was the only choice that felt like hers. So she walked out of his office with a black diamond on her finger and the weight of the entire city about to shift beneath her feet. And when she got in the car and Marcus asked where she wanted to go, she didn't hesitate. Home, she said, because for the first time in 6 years, she actually meant it. The announcement went out the next morning. Not a press release, not a formal statement, just word spreading through the city like wildfire. Serafina Vale is marrying Dante Rourke. By noon, her phone was flooded with messages. Friends she hadn't spoken to in years, acquaintances who suddenly wanted to reconnect, people she'd never met, congratulating her on things they didn't understand. She ignored all of them, except one. Carmen called at 2 p.m, voice sharp with something between awe and concern. You did it. I did it. How do you feel? Serafina looked down at the ring on her finger, at the way it caught the light streaming through her bedroom window. Terrified, she admitted. Good. That means you're paying attention. Carmen paused. You know this changes everything, right? The second you marry him, you're not just Serafina Vale anymore. You're Serafina Rourke. And that name carries weight. I know. Do you? Because people are already talking, saying you moved on fast, saying you're using Dante the way Adrian used you, saying, I don't care what people are saying. You should. Carmen's voice was firm now. Because in 2 weeks, you're walking into a room full of the most dangerous people in this city, and they're all going to be watching to see if you break. I won't break. I believe you, but they don't know you anymore. You've been gone too long. You're going to have to prove yourself all over again. The words settled in Serafina's chest like stones. Then I'll prove myself. Good. Carmen softened slightly. I'm proud of you, you know, for choosing yourself. Finally. Thanks. I'll see you at the wedding. And Sarah? Yeah? Don't let them make you small again, no matter what happens. The line went dead. Serafina sat there for a long time, phone in her hand, staring at nothing. Then she stood, went downstairs, and found her father in his office. He looked up when she entered, eyes going immediately to her hand, to the ring. It's done, he said. It's done. Victor leaned back in his chair, something like satisfaction crossing his face. Good. We start planning tomorrow. Guest list, venue, security. This is going to be... I want to see the files, Serafina interrupted. He frowned. What files? Everything you have on Richard Lang, on Monica, on Adrian's deals, all of it. Why? Because if I'm going to walk into that wedding as Dante Rourke's wife, I need to know exactly who I'm standing against. Victor studied her for a long moment. Then he smiled, a real one, sharp and proud. "All right," he said, and he pulled open his desk drawer and handed her the first file. By the time Serafina finished reading, it was past midnight, and she knew exactly what she was going to do. Not just at the wedding, but after. Because Dante Rourke had promised her protection. But she was going to give herself something better, revenge. The files Victor gave her weren't just documents. They were blueprints for destruction. Serafina spent 3 days locked in her father's study, door closed, phone silenced, reading every page until the words blurred together and her eyes burned from lack of sleep. Marcus brought her coffee. Victor checked in once, saw her surrounded by papers, and left without saying a word. By the end of day 3, she knew everything. She knew that Richard Lang's real estate empire was built on shell companies and offshore accounts that would collapse under the right kind of scrutiny. She knew Monica Lang had a sealed juvenile record, assault, expunged when she turned 18, but the paperwork still existed if you knew where to look. She knew Adrian had lied on his financial disclosures to secure the consulting contract with Lang Industries, and that one anonymous tip to the SEC would trigger an investigation that would bury him. But the file that mattered most, the one that made her hands shake when she read it, was the timeline. Adrian hadn't met Monica 8 months ago. He'd met her 2 years ago. At a charity gala, Serafina had skipped because she'd been sick with the flu. The first email exchange was dated exactly 1 week after that event. Professional at first, polite, then familiar, then something else entirely, which meant Adrian had been planning his exit for 2 years. 2 years of lying next to her at night. 2 years of pretending he loved her while building a backup plan. 2 years of strategically positioning himself so that when he finally left, he'd land somewhere better. She'd been a stepping stone, not just toward Richard Lang's money, but away from the life he'd decided wasn't good enough anymore. The rage that came then wasn't hot. It was cold. Surgical. The kind of rage that didn't scream or break things. The kind that planned. She picked up her phone, dialed a number she'd called once in the last 3 days. Dante answered on the first ring. "What do you need?" Not hello, not how are you, just straight to the point. She liked that about him. "I need a favor," she said. "Name it." "The wedding. I want Adrian there." Silence on the other end. Then, "Why?" "Because I'm going to destroy him. In front of everyone. And I need him to see it coming." Another pause. Longer this time. "You're sure?" "Yes." "This isn't about making a scene, is it? This is strategic." "It's both." She could almost hear him smile. "Give me the details. I'll make it happen." She told him about the files, about the timeline, about Richard Lang's vulnerabilities and Monica's sealed record and the SEC violations waiting to be discovered. Dante listened without interrupting. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. "You've been busy," he said. "I had good material to work with." "Your father?" "My father doesn't know what I'm planning, and he doesn't need to." "Fair enough," Dante's voice shifted, went lower. "But understand something. Once you do this, there's no going back. Richard Lang has connections, powerful ones, and when you expose his son-in-law at our wedding, you're making an enemy." "I already have enemies." "Not like him." "I don't care." "You should." "Dante," she kept her voice steady, "you promised me protection. You promised me partnership. Was that real? Or were you just saying what I wanted to hear?" The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut. "It was real," he said finally. "And it still is. But protection doesn't mean I can stop every consequence. It means I stand with you when they come." "Then stand with me." "I will." His voice went hard. "But you need to be ready, because the second you pull that trigger, everyone's going to be watching to see if you can handle the fallout." "I can handle it." "We'll see." The line went dead. Serafina set the phone down, looked at the files spread across the desk. She'd been afraid of this world for so long. Afraid of becoming what her father was. Afraid of the violence and the control and the way power ate people alive. But sitting there, surrounded by evidence of Adrian's betrayal and Richard Lang's corruption, she realized something. She wasn't afraid anymore. She was angry. And anger, properly directed, was just another word for justice. The wedding was set for Saturday night. 2 weeks had collapsed into 10 days, then 7, then 3. Serafina barely slept. The dress fittings, the venue walkthroughs, the endless meetings with planners and security teams and caterers who all spoke to her like she was fragile, like she might break if they said the wrong thing. She wanted to tell them she'd already broken and put herself back together harder, but she just smiled and nodded and let them think whatever they needed to think. Dante was everywhere and nowhere. He showed up to the important meetings, made decisions about things she didn't care about, signed contracts and approved budgets and moved through the preparations like a general planning a siege. But he didn't try to control her, didn't question her choices or override her decisions. He'd promised partnership, and he was delivering. The only time he pushed back was when she insisted on writing her own vows. "That's not how we do things," he said. They were in his office 3 days before the wedding, reviewing the final timeline. "How do you do things?" she asked. "Traditional, simple, no surprises." "I'm not traditional. I've noticed. And I'm definitely not simple." His mouth twitched. "Also noticed. So let me write my own vows." Dante leaned back in his chair, studying her with those dark, unreadable eyes. "What are you planning to say?" "That's between me and you, on Saturday night." "Serafina." "Dante." She held his gaze. "You told me I'd be your equal. That means trusting me, even when you don't know what I'm doing." He was quiet for a long time. Then he nodded once. "Fine. But if you embarrass me, I won't. If you make this about him, it's not about him. It's about us." Dante stood, moved around the desk until he was standing in front of her, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to look at him. "This marriage is real," he said quietly. "Not a performance, not a strategy. Real. You understand that?" "Yes." "Because once we say those vows, you're mine, and I'm yours, and that means something." Her heart kicked against her ribs. "I know. Do you?" His hand came up, fingers brushing the side of her face. "Because I'm not Adrian. I'm not going to leave. I'm not going to cheat. And I'm sure as hell not going to use you and throw you away." "I know," she said again, quieter this time. "Then trust me the way I'm trusting you." She looked up at him, at the scar along his jaw, at the hardness in his eyes that somehow didn't feel cruel, and realized he was right. She'd been so focused on destroying Adrian that she'd forgotten this was about more than revenge. It was about starting something new, something real. "Okay," she whispered. Dante's hand dropped. He stepped back. "Good. Now get out of here. I have work to do." She stood, grabbed her coat. "Serafina." She turned. 3 days, he said. "And then you're stuck with me." Despite everything, she almost smiled. "I can think of worse fates." "Yeah?" "Yeah." The night before the wedding, Serafina couldn't sleep. She lay in bed at her father's house, staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle around her. Tomorrow she'd walk down an aisle. Tomorrow she'd stand in front of everyone who mattered in this city and marry a man she barely knew. Tomorrow she'd stop being Serafina Vale and become Serafina Rourke. The name felt strange in her mouth. Foreign, but not wrong. At 2 in the morning, she gave up on sleep, got dressed, and went downstairs. Victor was still awake, sitting in his study with a glass of whiskey and a file open in front of him. He looked up when she appeared in the doorway. "Can't sleep?" he asked. "No." "Nervous?" "Maybe." He gestured to the chair across from him. "Sit." She did. They sat in silence for a minute, the only sound the ticking of the clock on the mantel. "You're doing the right thing," Victor said finally. "Am I?" "You're choosing power over uncertainty, control over chaos. That's always the right thing." "What if I'm choosing wrong?" Victor set his glass down, looked at her with something that might have been sympathy if he'd allowed himself to feel it. "There's no wrong choice here, Serafina. Only different versions of survival. And Dante Rourke, he's the best version you're going to get." "You sound very sure." "I am sure, because I've watched him build an empire from nothing. I've seen him break men who thought they could take what was his, and I've seen the way he looks at you." She frowned. "What do you mean?" "He looks at you like you're the only thing in the room worth protecting." Victor leaned forward. "I've known Dante for 10 years. I've never seen him look at anyone that way. Not once. So whatever doubts you have, put them aside. Because tomorrow, you're marrying a man who will burn this city to the ground before he lets anyone hurt you. The words should have been comforting, but all Serafina could think about was Adrian, about the way he used to look at her in the beginning, like she was worth protecting too, and how that had turned out. What if it doesn't last? She asked quietly. Then you make sure you're the one who walks away with power. Victor's voice was flat, pragmatic. But I don't think you'll need to. Dante doesn't do temporary, and neither do you, not anymore. She wanted to believe him, wanted to believe that this marriage would be different, that she was different. But sitting there in her father's study at 2 a.m, doubt crept in like cold water, filling all the spaces where certainty used to be. Go to bed, Victor said. You need to be sharp tomorrow. Yeah. She stood, started toward the door. Serafina. She stopped. I'm proud of you, he said. In case I forget to say it tomorrow. Her throat tightened. Victor didn't say things like that. Ever. Thanks, she managed, and she left before he could see the tears she refused to let fall. Get. The wedding was at 8. By 6, Serafina was already at the venue, a converted warehouse on the river, all exposed brick and vaulted ceilings and industrial elegance. Dante had chosen it. She'd approved it. Together, they'd turned it into something that looked less like a wedding and more like a declaration of war. Black marble floors, long tables draped in charcoal silk, centerpieces made of dark roses and silver thorns, everything sharp, everything deliberate. The guest list read like a directory of the city's most dangerous people. Mafia bosses, crime lords, politicians who owed favors, judges who'd been bought, business owners who paid protection money and smiled while doing it, and somewhere in that crowd, buried among people who knew exactly what kind of world they lived in, would be Adrian, and Richard Lang, and Monica. Serafina had made sure of it. She stood in the bridal suite, if you could call it that, staring at herself in the mirror. The dress was black, not white, not cream, not any shade of virginal purity. Black silk that clung to her like a second skin, cut low in the back, slit high on one thigh. No veil, no train, just her and the dress and the black diamond ring on her finger that caught the light like a threat. Carmen stood behind her, hands on Serafina's shoulders, eyes meeting hers in the mirror. You look terrifying, Carmen said. Good. I mean it. You look like you're about to murder someone. Maybe I am. Carmen's reflection frowned. Sarah, what are you planning? Nothing you need to worry about. Bullshit. I know that look. That's the look you used to get right before you did something insane. Serafina turned to face her. Do you trust me? That's not the question. Yes, it is. Carmen studied her for a long moment. I trust you. But I also know you've been reading your father's files for the last week, and I know Adrian's on the guest list. So whatever you're planning, just don't burn the whole city down, okay? I'll try. Sarah, I'll be fine. She squeezed Carmen's hand. I promise. Carmen didn't look convinced, but she nodded anyway. A knock on the door interrupted them. Marcus stepped inside, expression carefully neutral. It's time. Serafina took a breath. This was it. No going back. She walked out of the suite, down a hallway that smelled like concrete and roses, toward the main floor where 300 people were waiting to watch her become someone new. The music started as she reached the entrance. Not a wedding march. Something darker. Heavier. A cello and violin arrangement that sounded more like a requiem than a celebration. The doors opened, and she stepped into the room. Every head turned. The silence that followed was absolute. Serafina walked down the aisle alone. No father to give her away. No bridesmaids flanking her. Just her, moving through a sea of people who'd spent years underestimating her, toward a man who stood at the end like a king waiting for his queen. Dante watched her approach with an expression she couldn't read, but his eyes never left hers. When she reached him, he held out his hand. She took it. His grip was warm, solid, certain. You're late, he murmured. 3 minutes. Still late. Get used to it. His mouth curved slightly. Then the officiant began. Serafina didn't hear most of it. She was too busy scanning the crowd, looking for faces. There. 3rd row, on the left. Adrian. He looked smaller than she remembered, pale, uncomfortable in a suit that probably cost more than he used to make in a month. Monica sat beside him, beautiful and bored, scrolling through her phone like this was just another obligation. Richard Lang sat 2 rows behind them, face carved from stone, eyes tracking every movement like a predator watching prey. Good. Let them watch. Let them see what they'd lost. The officiant was talking about commitment now, about partnership and trust and building something that lasted. Serafina felt Dante's hand tighten around hers. Vows, the officiant said, turning to Dante first. Dante didn't pull out a card or a piece of paper. He just looked at her and spoke. I don't believe in fate. I believe in choices. And 3 years ago, I saw you and chose to wait. Today, I'm choosing to stop waiting. I'm choosing you. Not because you're convenient, not because you're useful, but because you're the only person I've ever met who doesn't flinch when things get ugly. And I promise you this, I will protect you. I will stand with you. And I will never give you a reason to regret walking down that aisle. The words were simple, blunt, honest, exactly like him. Serafina's throat tightened. The officiant turned to her. And now, the bride. She'd written her vows 3 days ago. Rewrote them twice. But standing there, looking at Dante, she realized she didn't need the words she'd prepared. She needed the truth. I don't know how to do this, she said quietly. I don't know how to be someone's wife without losing myself. I tried it before, and it almost destroyed me. But I'm not afraid of being destroyed anymore. I'm afraid of being small. And you're the first person who's ever made me feel like I don't have to choose between power and partnership. So I'm choosing you. Not because I need you, but because I want to see what we can build together. And I promise you this. I won't run. I won't hide. And I won't let anyone make me small again, including you. Dante's eyes went dark. He pulled her closer, close enough that she could feel his breath against her face. Good, he whispered. The officiant cleared his throat. The rings? Someone handed them over. Dante took hers first, a matching black diamond band that fit perfectly next to her engagement ring. He slid it onto her finger, slow and deliberate. Then she took his, simple platinum, no stones, just metal that would last. She put it on his hand, felt the weight of what they were doing settle over both of them like armor. By the power vested in me, the officiant said, I now pronounce you husband and wife. He didn't get to the kissing part, because that's when the door at the back of the room slammed open, and everything went to hell. The man who walked in wasn't supposed to be there. Serafina knew that immediately, because Dante went rigid beside her, hand tightening around hers until it almost hurt, because the entire room went silent in a way that had nothing to do with respect and everything to do with fear, because the man walking down the aisle, flanked by 2 others in dark suits, moved like he owned the building, like he owned the city, like he owned Dante. He was older, late 60s maybe, silver hair, expensive suit, face that could have been carved from marble. His eyes swept the room once, landed on Dante, and stayed there. Sorry I'm late, the man said, voice carrying across the space like a gunshot. Traffic. No one laughed. Dante released Serafina's hand, stepped forward. You weren't invited, Matthias. Matthias. The name hit Serafina like a punch. Matthias Carver. She'd heard that name before. Read it in her father's files. Matthias Carver ran the north side. Drugs, weapons, everything Dante didn't touch. They'd had an agreement for years. Non-interference, separate territories. But the way Matthias was looking at Dante right now didn't look like non-interference. It looked like ownership. I don't need an invitation, Matthias said, stopping a few feet away. We're family, after all. Dante's jaw tightened. We're not family. No? Matthias smiled, cold, sharp. Then what would you call the man who gave you everything you have? The room shifted, people leaning forward, whispers starting, eyes darting between Dante and Matthias like they were watching a fuse burn toward dynamite. Serafina's pulse roared in her ears. Get out, Dante said quietly. In a minute, Matthias turned his attention to Serafina. You must be the bride. Serafina Vale, Victor's daughter. I've heard a lot about you. She didn't respond, just stood there, every instinct screaming at her to move, to run, to get away from whatever was about to happen. "Did he tell you?" Matthias asked, voice pleasant, conversational. "About how he built his empire?" "Don't," Dante warned. "Did he tell you that 10 years ago he was nothing, just another kid with ambition and no capital?" "Matthias, did he tell you that I gave him his first territory, his first shipment, his first taste of real power?" The words landed like bombs. Serafina looked at Dante. His face was stone. "Did he tell you," Matthias continued, "that everything he has, every building, every deal, every dollar, exists because I allowed it?" "That's not true," Dante said. "Isn't it?" Matthias pulled something from his jacket, a folded piece of paper. He opened it, held it up. "This is a contract, signed 10 years ago, between me and you. It says that in exchange for initial capital and territory access, you owe me 20% of your gross revenue, in perpetuity." The silence that followed was deafening. Serafina's vision narrowed. 20%, in perpetuity. "You paid it for the first 5 years, Matthias said. Then you stopped. Said the contract was void, that you'd paid your debt." "I did pay my debt. Not according to this." Matthias smiled again. "According to this, you owe me $40 million, and I'm here to collect." Dante moved so fast Serafina almost didn't see it. He grabbed Matthias by the collar, slammed him backward against one of the pillars hard enough that the impact echoed through the room. "You son of a bitch," Dante growled. "You show up at my wedding, our wedding," Matthias corrected, not even struggling. "Because without me, you wouldn't be here. Without me, you'd still be running errands for men who actually matter." Dante's fist pulled back, but he didn't swing, because Matthias's 2 guards had moved forward, hands inside their jackets, eyes locked on Dante, and because Victor Vale was suddenly standing beside them, hand on Dante's shoulder, voice low and dangerous. "Let him go!" Dante didn't move. "Dante, let him go." Slowly Dante released Matthias, stepped back. His hands were shaking. Serafina had never seen his hands shake. Victor turned to Matthias, expression unreadable. "You have 30 seconds to explain why you're here." "I already explained." Matthias straightened his jacket. "I'm collecting a debt. Dante doesn't owe you anything. The contract says otherwise. The contract is 10 years old. It's void. Not according to my lawyers." Victor's eyes went flat. "Then your lawyers are wrong." "Are they?" Matthias looked around the room. "Because I brought copies. Enough for everyone here. And unless Dante pays what he owes, I'll make sure every person in this city knows that the great Dante Rourke built his empire on borrowed money he never paid back." The threat hung in the air like smoke. Serafina felt the ground tilt beneath her. This wasn't just about money. This was about reputation, about power, about destroying Dante's credibility in front of everyone who mattered. "How much?" Serafina heard herself ask. Everyone turned to look at her. "How much does he owe?" she repeated, voice steadier than she felt. Matthias smiled. 40 million, plus interest. Call it 50, total. $50 million. The number was absurd. Impossible. "And if he pays? Then we're square. And I leave. And this never happened." "And if he doesn't?" Matthias's smile widened. "Then I start talking, and by the time I'm done, no one in this city will trust Dante Rourke to run a lemonade stand, let alone half the eastern seaboard." Dante stepped forward again. "You're bluffing. Try me. I'll destroy you." "With what? The reputation you're about to lose?" Matthias shook his head. "You should have paid your debts, boy. Now it's too late." Serafina looked at Dante, really looked at him, and saw something she'd never seen before. Fear. Not of Matthias, of what this would do to everything he'd built. Her mind raced. $50 million. Her father had that kind of money. Dante probably did too. But paying it would mean admitting the debt was real. Would mean admitting Matthias had power over him. Would mean weakness. And in this world, weakness was death. "I'll pay it," Serafina said. Every head in the room turned toward her. Dante's eyes went wide. "What?" "I'll pay it." She looked at Matthias. 50 million. Transferred to whatever account you want. Tomorrow morning." "Serafina, no." Tomorrow morning, she repeated, ignoring Dante. And then you leave, and you never contact him again. Mattia studied her like she was a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. You have $50 million? No, but my father does. She turned to Victor. His face was unreadable. Please, she said quietly. For a long moment, Victor didn't move. Then he nodded once. Fine, he said. I'll wire the money tomorrow. Matthias's smile was slow, satisfied. Well, I guess that settles it. He looked at Dante. You married well, boy. Better than you deserve. And then he turned and walked out. His guards followed. The doors closed behind them, and the room exploded into whispers. Serafina stood there, dressed suddenly too tight, air suddenly too thin, watching Dante's face as realization crashed over him. She'd just saved him. But she'd also just proven that he needed saving, that without her, without Victor, he would have been destroyed, that his empire wasn't his, it was borrowed, just like everything else. Dante turned to her, eyes dark and unreadable. We need to talk, he said. Not here. Now. He grabbed her hand, not gently, and pulled her toward a side door. Serafina followed, pulse hammering, knowing with absolute certainty that everything had just changed, and not in the way she'd planned. But still... The room Dante dragged her into was small. Storage, maybe. Boxes stacked against one wall, a single bare bulb hanging from the ceiling. He released her hand the second the door closed, turned on her. What the hell did you just do? I saved you. I didn't ask you to save me. You didn't have to. Her voice was rising now, matching his. He was going to destroy you, in front of everyone, and you were just going to stand there and let him. I had it under control. You didn't. You were shaking, Dante. I saw your hands. You were terrified. I wasn't... Don't lie to me. She stepped closer, fury boiling over. You promised me honesty, even when it's ugly, so be honest. Was the contract real? Dante's jaw worked. He didn't answer. Dante, was it real? Yes. The word hit like a slap. Jesus Christ. She pressed her hands to her face. You built everything on debt you never paid back? I paid it back, every dollar, plus interest, 5 years ago. Then why does he still have the contract? Because he refused to destroy it. Said it was insurance. I thought he was bluffing. Well, he wasn't. Serafina dropped her hands. And now my father just paid $50 million to make your problem go away. I didn't ask him to. No, I did. Because that's what partners do. They save each other. This isn't saving me. This is making me look weak. You already looked weak, standing there while he called you boy and threatened to destroy your reputation. You looked weak, Dante, and I fixed it. He grabbed her shoulders, pulled her close enough that she could see the fury in his eyes. You humiliated me, he said, voice low and dangerous. I saved you. Same thing. They stared at each other, both breathing hard, both furious, both terrified of what came next. Serafina pulled away from his grip. We're married now, she said quietly. That means your problems are my problems. Your debts are my debts. And if someone threatens you, they threaten me. That's exactly how this works. You told me we were partners, equal. So if I have to spend $50 million to protect you, that's what I do. And you don't get to be angry about it. Dante turned away, hands braced against the wall, head bowed. You don't understand, he said. Then explain it to me. I spent 10 years building something that was mine, something no one could take away, something that didn't depend on anyone else's money or power. And in one night, Matthias Carver just proved that none of it was real, that everything I have exists because he allowed it. That's not true. It is true. He spun back around. You saw the contract. You heard him. Without his initial capital, I'd be nothing, and now everyone knows it. So what? Serafina moved closer. So what if people know you started with help? Everyone starts with help. My father gave me a name that opened doors. Your father, or whoever the hell raised you, gave you whatever skills you needed to survive. We all build on something. That doesn't make it weak. It makes it human. In this world, human is the same thing as weak. No, in this world, refusing help is weak. And I just proved that you're strong enough to accept it. Dante looked at her like she'd just spoken a language he didn't understand. You really believe that? Yes. He exhaled slowly. Some of the fury drained from his expression. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I shouldn't have grabbed you. No, you shouldn't have. And I shouldn't have said you humiliated me. No, you shouldn't have. But I'm still angry. I know, so am I. They stood there in the dim light, both of them bruised by a night that was supposed to be about new beginnings and had turned into something else entirely. What do we do now? Dante asked. Serafina looked down at the black diamond on her finger, at the symbol of a marriage that had barely lasted an hour before it broke. We go back out there, she said. We finish the reception. We smile and dance and pretend everything's fine. And tomorrow, we figure out how to survive this. Together? She met his eyes. Together. He nodded slowly. Then he held out his hand. She took it, and they walked back out into the party, both of them wearing masks that didn't quite fit, both of them wondering if the marriage they'd just entered was already over before it began. But when they stepped back into the main room, the whispers stopped. The crowd parted, and Dante pulled Serafina onto the dance floor, hand at her waist, eyes locked on hers, moving like they'd done this 1,000 times before. They're still watching, he murmured. Let them watch. They think we're weak now. Then we prove them wrong. His hand tightened on her waist. How? She thought about Adrian, sitting somewhere in this crowd, watching her dance with a man who'd just been exposed as built on borrowed power. She thought about Richard Lang, probably already planning how to use this information. She thought about Matthias Carver, walking away with $50 million and a smile. And she realized something. The plan she'd made, the revenge she'd been plotting, didn't matter anymore. Because the real fight wasn't with Adrian, it was here, with Dante, against a city that wanted to see them fail. We make them afraid, she said quietly. Dante's eyes darkened. Of what? Of us. And as the music swelled and the crowd watched and the night stretched on toward something neither of them could predict, Serafina Vale, now Serafina Rourke, made a new promise. Not to Dante, to herself. She was done being the woman people underestimated. Starting now, she was going to be the woman they feared, even if it killed her. The reception lasted 3 more hours. 3 hours of smiling faces and raised glasses and people pretending they hadn't just watched Dante Rourke get exposed as a man built on borrowed capital. 3 hours of Serafina's feet aching in heels she should have kicked off an hour ago, of her face hurting from holding the same expression, of conversations that danced around what everyone was really thinking. By the time the last guest left, it was past midnight. Serafina stood near the entrance, watching taillights disappear down the street, aware of Dante somewhere behind her talking to Victor in low, clipped tones. She couldn't hear what they were saying. Didn't want to. Her father had just spent $50 million cleaning up her husband's mess. That debt would come due eventually. Everything always did. Carmen appeared at her elbow, coat already on, keys in hand. You okay? Fine. Liar. Serafina turned to look at her. What do you want me to say? That my wedding just turned into a hostage negotiation? That I'm married to a man who's currently figuring out whether to thank me or divorce me? That I have no idea what happens next? Any of those would be honest. Honesty doesn't help right now. Carmen studied her for a long moment. You're planning something? I'm always planning something. Sarah, just go home, Carmen. I'll call you tomorrow. Will you? Yes. Carmen didn't look convinced, but she nodded anyway, pulled Serafina into a brief, tight hug. Don't do anything stupid. Too late for that. Carmen left, and Serafina was alone again. She walked back into the main room, found it nearly empty. The catering staff was breaking down tables. The florist was collecting centerpieces. Everything that had looked elegant and dangerous 3 hours ago now just looked tired. Victor and Dante stood near the bar, conversation clearly over, both of them looking at her as she approached. We're leaving, Dante said. Not a question. Where? My place. Downtown. She'd expected that. Dante had a penthouse in the same building as his office. She'd never been inside, never asked to be. Now she was going to live there. Fine, she said. Victor stepped forward, kissed her forehead. a gesture so uncharacteristic it made her freeze. You did well tonight. I spent your money. You made a strategic move. That's different. His hand came up, rested briefly on her cheek. Call me tomorrow. We need to discuss next steps. Next steps for what? For making sure Matthias Carver regrets showing up tonight. The words should have been comforting. Instead, they felt like a noose tightening. Victor left. And then it was just her and Dante and the hollow echo of a wedding that had imploded before it even began. Ready? Dante asked. No. Yes. They walked out together, got into the back of a car that wasn't Marcus's, driven by someone Serafina didn't recognize. Dante gave the address. The driver nodded. They pulled away from the venue in silence. Serafina watched the city slide past the window. Buildings lit up like beacons, streets still crowded with people who had no idea what kind of night she'd just survived. Dante sat beside her, not touching her, staring straight ahead. Are we going to talk about it? She asked finally. Not tonight. When? When I'm not angry anymore. That could take a while. Then it takes a while. She turned to look at him. I'm your wife now. You don't get to shut me out. His jaw tightened. I'm not shutting you out. I'm trying not to say something I'll regret. Say it anyway. No. Dante, Serafina. He finally looked at her, and the exhaustion in his eyes hit her like a physical blow. I just spent the last 3 hours watching everyone I've ever done business with reassess whether I'm worth the risk. I watched my reputation take a hit it might not recover from. And the only reason I'm not currently destroying Matthias Carver's entire operation is because your father just paid him enough money to disappear. So forgive me if I don't want to have a conversation about feelings right now. The words were harsh, honest, exactly what she'd asked for. Okay, she said quietly. They didn't speak again until the car pulled up in front of his building. The penthouse was everything she'd expected. Cold, modern, expensive in a way that didn't need to announce itself. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, dark furniture, minimal decoration, the kind of place a man lived when he didn't need it to feel like home. Dante walked in ahead of her, shrugged off his jacket, tossed it over the back of a chair. Serafina stood in the entrance, still holding her clutch, still wearing her heels, suddenly unsure what she was supposed to do. This was her home now, this sterile, beautiful cage. Bedrooms down the hall, Dante said without looking at her. Second door on the left, bathrooms attached. There are towels in the cabinet. Where are you sleeping? Guest room. Her stomach dropped. Dante? Don't. He turned to face her, and the look in his eyes was pure exhaustion. I can't do this tonight. I can't pretend we're okay. I can't share a bed with you and act like everything's fine when it's not. I never said everything was fine. Good. Because it's not. He moved toward the hallway, stopped at the threshold. Get some sleep. We'll talk in the morning. And then he was gone. Serafina stood there in the empty living room, still wearing her wedding dress, feeling the weight of the black diamond on her finger like an anchor dragging her down. She'd married a man who was already sleeping in another room. This was not how tonight was supposed to end. But nothing about tonight had gone the way it was supposed to. She walked down the hall to the bedroom Dante had indicated, opened the door, found a space that was clearly meant for guests, neutral colors, impersonal furniture, nothing that suggested anyone actually lived here. She sat on the edge of the bed, kicked off her heels, and let her head fall into her hands. What the hell had she done? Eek. She woke up to sunlight cutting through blinds she didn't remember closing. For a second, she forgot where she was. Then it all came back. The wedding. Matthias. The $50 million. Dante's face when she'd offered to pay. The fact that her husband had spent their wedding night in a different room. She sat up, looked around. Her dress was still on, wrinkled now, uncomfortable. She'd fallen asleep in it. Her phone was on the nightstand. 7 missed calls from Carmen, 3 from Victor, 1 from a number she didn't recognize. She ignored all of them. Got up, found the bathroom, peeled off the dress, and left it in a heap on the floor. Stood under water, as hot as she could stand until her skin turned red, and her head cleared enough to think. By the time she got out, wrapped in a towel, she could hear movement in the apartment. She dressed in the only clothes she had, the one she'd worn to the venue yesterday before changing into the wedding dress. Black slacks, white blouse, armor that didn't quite fit anymore. When she walked into the kitchen, Dante was already there. He'd showered too, changed into jeans and a t-shirt. He looked more human than he had last night. But the tension in his shoulders was still there, coiled tight. He was making coffee. "Morning," she said. He glanced up. "Morning? Did you sleep?" "No." "Me neither." He poured 2 cups, handed her one. They stood on opposite sides of the kitchen island, not touching, both waiting for the other to speak first. Finally, Dante broke. "I owe you an apology." "For what?" "For last night, for being an asshole, for making you feel like you did something wrong when you were trying to help." Serafina wrapped her hands around the mug, let the heat ground her. "You weren't wrong, though. I did humiliate you, in front of everyone. You saved me." "Same thing." He almost smiled at that. Almost. "Yeah, I'm starting to realize that." "So where does that leave us?" Dante set his mug down, came around the island until he was standing in front of her. Close enough to touch. He didn't. "It leaves us married," he said, "and figuring out what that means. Does it mean you actually sleep in the same room as me? Or are we doing the whole separate beds thing for the rest of our lives? It means I stop being a coward and admit that I'm terrified." The honesty hit her like a slap. "Of what?" "Of needing you." His voice was rough. "I spent 10 years building something that was mine, something I controlled. And in one night, you proved that I don't control anything, that without you, without your father, I'm nothing." "That's not true." "It feels true." "Feelings aren't facts." "Tell that to the 3 people who canceled meetings with me this morning." Her chest tightened. "What?" 3 separate business deals, all canceled, no explanation, just polite emails saying they've decided to go in a different direction. He leaned back against the counter, arms crossed. "Matthias didn't just embarrass me last night. He made people question whether I'm stable, whether I'm trustworthy, whether I'm worth the risk. So we fix it." "How?" "I don't know yet, but we will." She set her mug down, moved closer. "You promised me partnership. That means we figure this out together." Dante looked at her with something that might have been hope if it wasn't buried under so much exhaustion. "I don't know how to do this," he admitted. "I don't know how to share power. I don't know how to let someone in." "Then we learn together. And if we can't, then we fail together." She reached up, put her hand on his chest, felt his heart beating hard and fast beneath her palm. "But I don't think we're going to fail." "Why not?" "Because you're too stubborn, and I'm too angry." This time he did smile. Small, tired, but real. "Angry at who?" "Everyone. Matthias, Adrian, this whole goddamn city." She pulled her hand back. "But mostly at myself, for thinking I could walk into this world and not get blood on my hands." "You haven't gotten blood on your hands." "Not yet." Something shifted in Dante's expression. "What are you planning?" "I'm planning to make sure Matthias Carver regrets showing up at our wedding." "Serafina, you don't get to tell me no. Not on this." "I'm not telling you no. I'm telling you to be careful. Matthias is dangerous." "So am I." Dante studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "Yeah, I'm starting to see that." His phone rang. He pulled it from his pocket, looked at the screen, and his entire expression changed. "Who is it?" Serafina asked. "Richard Lang." Her pulse kicked up. "Answer it." Dante hit speaker, set the phone on the counter between them. "Dante Rourke," he said, voice perfectly controlled. "Mr. Rourke, Richard Lang, I hope I'm not calling too early." "Not at all. What can I do for you?" "I wanted to reach out personally. Congratulations on your marriage. I heard it was quite the event." The words were pleasant. The tone underneath was poison. "It was," Dante said carefully. "Thank you. I also heard you ran into some unexpected complications. Matthias Carver, wasn't it?" Serafina's hands curled into fists. "Ancient history," Dante said. "Already resolved." "I'm glad to hear it, because I'd hate for any uncertainty about your financial situation to impact our ongoing conversations." What conversations? The waterfront development project. We were scheduled to sign contracts next week, but given last night's revelations, my board has some concerns. Dante's jaw tightened. What kind of concerns? The kind that make them question whether you're a reliable partner. Surely you understand. I understand that you're using gossip to renegotiate terms. Richard Lang laughed, smooth, unbothered. I'm simply being prudent, but if you'd like to discuss this further, I'm happy to meet. Say, tomorrow afternoon? My office? Serafina grabbed Dante's arm, shook her head. Don't go. It's a trap. But Dante ignored her. Tomorrow works, he said. What time? 2:00. And Dante? Bring your wife. I'd love to meet the woman who saved you. The line went dead. Dante picked up his phone, stared at it like it might explode. You shouldn't have agreed, Serafina said. I didn't have a choice. There's always a choice. Not when he controls half the waterfront contracts in this city. Dante shoved his phone back in his pocket. That development project is worth $200 million. If I lose it, I lose credibility with every other investor watching. So we don't lose it. How? He just spent the last 3 minutes telling me he thinks I'm unreliable. Then we prove him wrong. Dante turned to her. You realize this is Adrian's future father-in-law we're talking about, right? The man your ex-husband used you to get close to? I know exactly who he is. And you want to walk into his office and negotiate? No. I want to walk into his office and destroy him. The words came out colder than she'd intended. Harder. Dante stared at her like he was seeing her for the first time. You've been planning this, he said slowly, since before the wedding. This isn't about Matthias. This is about Adrian. It's about both. Serafina. Richard Lang built his empire on shell companies and offshore accounts that would collapse under audit. Adrian lied on his financial disclosures to get that consulting contract. And Monica has a sealed juvenile record that would destroy her reputation if it got out. She moved closer, eyes locked on his. I have everything I need to take them apart piece by piece, and tomorrow I'm going to start. Dante's expression was unreadable. Your father gave you those files. Yes, and you've been sitting on them for 2 weeks. I was waiting for the right moment. And you think tomorrow is it? I think tomorrow is when Richard Lang is going to realize that underestimating me was the worst mistake he ever made. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then Dante grabbed her face with both hands and kissed her. Hard, desperate, like he was trying to prove something to both of them. When he pulled back, his eyes were dark, intense. Okay, he said. Okay? Okay, we do this your way, but if it goes wrong, it won't. If it does, we leave together. No heroics. No last stands. We walk out and we regroup. Deal. He kissed her again, softer this time. And for the first time since the wedding, Serafina felt like they might actually survive this. But the next 24 hours were a blur of preparation. Serafina spent the morning going through the files again, memorizing every detail, every vulnerability, every piece of information that could be weaponized. Dante made calls, rescheduled meetings, pulled together documentation that would prove the waterfront project was still viable despite Matthias's stunt. They worked separately but in sync, each of them building their half of the plan. By the time they got in the car to head to Richard Lang's office the next afternoon, Serafina felt ready. Not confident, but ready. The building was downtown, all glass and steel and corporate wealth. They rode the elevator up to the 32nd floor in silence, both of them dressed like they were going into battle. Dante in a dark suit, Serafina in a black dress and heels sharp enough to draw blood. The receptionist showed them to a conference room. Richard Lang was already there. So was Adrian. So was Monica. Serafina's pulse jumped when she saw them, but she kept her face blank, neutral. Adrian looked uncomfortable. Monica looked bored. Richard looked like a man who'd already won. Mr. Rourke, Mrs. Rourke, please sit. Richard gestured to the chairs across from him. They sat. Serafina folded her hands in her lap, felt the weight of the files she'd memorized pressing against her ribs like a second heartbeat. Thank you for coming, Richard continued. I know this is short notice. Not a problem, Dante said evenly. Good. Then let's get to it. Richard leaned back in his chair. The waterfront project. We've had some concerns since Saturday night. Concerns about your financial stability, your reputation, whether you're the right partner for something this high profile. Those concerns are unfounded. Are they? Because Matthias Carver seemed pretty convinced you owe him money. I don't owe him anything. The debt was paid. He showed up at my wedding looking for leverage he doesn't have. And yet your wife's father paid him $50 million. The words hung in the air like a blade. Serafina felt Dante tense beside her. That was a strategic decision, she said, voice calm. To avoid a scene. Richard turned his attention to her for the first time, really looked at her. Mrs. Rourke, I don't believe we've been formally introduced, though I know quite a bit about you. Do you? Your ex-husband has been very forthcoming. She glanced at Adrian. He couldn't meet her eyes. Has he? She said. That's interesting, because Adrian has a habit of being forthcoming about the wrong things. Adrian's head snapped up. Sarah. For example, she continued, ignoring him, he was very forthcoming about being married to Victor Vale's daughter when he applied for the consulting position at Lang Industries. Used that connection to prove he had access to influential people. Didn't you, Adrian? Adrian's face went pale. Richard's expression didn't change. That's a serious accusation. It's a fact, and I have the emails to prove it. She reached into her bag, pulled out a folder, slid it across the table, along with proof that he falsified his financial disclosures to make himself look more qualified than he actually was. Richard opened the folder. His face went very still. Where did you get this? Does it matter? What matters is that your son-in-law-to-be is a liar and a fraud, and if you move forward with him, I'll make sure the SEC knows about it. Monica stood up so fast her chair scraped backward. You bitch! Sit down, Richard said quietly. Monica sat. Richard looked at Adrian. Is this true? Adrian opened his mouth, closed it. It's not what it looks like. It's exactly what it looks like, Serafina said. He used me to get close to you, and when he didn't need me anymore, he discarded me, just like he'll discard you the second someone more useful comes along. That's not... Adrian's voice cracked. Sarah, please. Don't. She finally looked at him, really looked at him. You don't get to beg. You had 6 years to be honest. You chose to lie, and now you get to live with the consequences. Adrian looked like he might cry. Serafina felt nothing. Richard closed the folder slowly. This is quite the revelation. There's more, Dante said. If you're interested. Richard's eyes shifted to him. Go on. Your real estate holdings. The offshore accounts you use to hide assets from tax authorities. The shell companies in the Caymans. The bribes to city officials to fast-track permits. Dante leaned forward. We have documentation for all of it. And if you pull out of the waterfront project, we'll make sure every federal agency with jurisdiction knows exactly where to look. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Richard's face was stone. That's blackmail. No. That's negotiation. Dante's voice was cold, absolute. You wanted to know if I'm a reliable partner. Here's your answer. I'm reliable when you're reliable. I'm ruthless when you're ruthless. And right now, you're trying to use gossip and fear to renegotiate terms on a project we both know you need as much as I do. I don't need anything. Then walk away. Cancel the deal. And watch every business partner you have start asking questions about why Lang Industries suddenly has federal investigators crawling through its books. Silence. Heavy. Suffocating. Richard Lang stared at Dante, then at Serafina, then at the folder on the table. You're bluffing, he said finally. Serafina pulled out her phone, opened an email draft, turned the screen so he could see it. The recipient line read, Securities and Exchange Commission, Eastern District. The subject line, Financial Fraud, Lang Industries. The body of the email contained every piece of evidence they had. All she had to do was hit send. Try me, she said. Richard's jaw worked. For the first time since she'd met him, he looked uncertain. What do you want? He asked quietly. The waterfront project. Original terms. No renegotiation, no delays. Dante's voice didn't waver. And you cut ties with Adrian Carr. Immediately. He's going to marry my daughter. Then your daughter has terrible taste in men, but that's not my problem. Monica made a strangled sound. Adrian just sat there, face buried in his hands. Richard looked at the email on Serafina's phone, looked at Dante, looked at the folder. Fine, he said. Original terms. We sign next week. Good. And the email? Serafina deleted it. Gone. As long as you keep your end of the deal. Richard stood, buttoned his jacket. This conversation never happened. Agreed. He walked out without another word. Monica followed, shooting Serafina a look that could have cut glass. Adrian stayed. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Adrian looked up at Serafina, eyes red, voice broken. I loved you, he said. No, you didn't. I did. In the beginning, before everything got complicated. Love doesn't get complicated, Adrian. It gets tested, and you failed. I know. He stood slowly, like his bones hurt. I'm sorry. For all of it. I don't care. I know that too. He walked out. And then it was just Serafina and Dante in a conference room that smelled like expensive cologne and destroyed lives. Dante turned to her. You okay? She looked down at her hands. They weren't shaking. Yeah, she said, I'm okay. You just destroyed your ex-husband's entire future. I know. And you don't feel bad about it? Should I? Dante studied her for a long moment. Then he smiled, slow, dangerous, proud. No, he said. You shouldn't. He stood, held out his hand. She took it. They walked out of Richard Lang's building together, into sunlight that felt too bright, air that felt too clean. Serafina's phone buzzed. A text from Carmen. What did you do? She ignored it. Another buzz, this one from Victor. We need to talk, now. She ignored that too, because for the first time in weeks, she felt like she could breathe. Adrian was done. Richard Lang was neutralized. The waterfront project was back on track. She'd won. But when they got back to the car and Dante's phone rang, and his face went white as he listened to whoever was on the other end, Serafina realized something. Winning was temporary. And in this city, victories just meant you'd painted a bigger target on your back. Dante hung up. Looked at her. What? Oh, she asked. Matthias Carver just bought out 3 of my suppliers. As of tomorrow, I lose access to half my shipping routes. Her stomach dropped. He can't do that. He just did. Dante's voice was flat, and he sent a message. Said to tell you thank you for the 50 million. Said it gave him exactly the capital he needed to start a war. The words hit like bullets. Serafina had thought she was playing chess, but Matthias had been playing something else entirely. And she'd just handed him the opening move. What do we do? She whispered. Dante looked at her with eyes that had gone cold and hard and absolutely certain. We fight back, he said. And somewhere across the city, in an office Serafina had never seen, Matthias Carver smiled, because the real game was just beginning. The war started quietly. No explosions, no dramatic declarations, just 3 phone calls on a Tuesday morning, each one delivering the same message in slightly different words. Your shipments have been delayed, your contracts have been suspended, your suppliers have found more reliable partners. By noon, Dante had lost access to 4 major shipping routes and 2 warehouses he'd been using for the last 5 years. By evening, the rumors had already started spreading through the city like infection through a wound. Dante Rourke is losing control. Matthias Carver is making his move. The east side is up for grabs. Serafina sat in Dante's office, watching him work the phones, trying to salvage what he could. His voice never rose, never cracked, but she could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw tightened every time someone gave him another excuse that was really just a polite way of saying they were afraid of Matthias more than they respected Dante. When he finally hung up the last call, he sat there for a long moment, staring at nothing. How bad is it? She asked. Bad. He leaned back in his chair, ran both hands through his hair. I've lost 30% of my supply chain. Another 20% is on the fence, waiting to see which way this goes. If I don't stop the bleeding in the next 48 hours, I'm done. Matthias can't sustain this. He's overextending. He doesn't need to sustain it. He just needs to make me look weak long enough that everyone else jumps ship. Serafina stood, moved to the window that overlooked the city. The sun was setting, painting everything in shades of gold and red. It looked beautiful, peaceful. It was a lie. So we hit him back, she said. With what? He took your father's money and used it to buy out my suppliers. He's 3 moves ahead. Then we stopped playing his game. Dante looked at her. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we go to the source, find out what he actually wants, and give it to him. He wants me gone. He wants the East Side. He wants to prove that everything I built was only possible because he allowed it. Then we prove him wrong. How? Serafina turned from the window, walked back to the desk, placed both hands flat on the surface. We expose him. The same way we exposed Adrian and Richard Lang. We find his vulnerabilities, and we break them open in front of everyone who matters. Matthias has been in this game for 40 years. He doesn't have vulnerabilities. Everyone has vulnerabilities. We just have to find them. Dante studied her for a long moment. You're talking about going to war with the most dangerous man in this city. I'm talking about survival. It's not the same thing. It is now. He stood, came around the desk until he was standing in front of her, close enough that she could see the exhaustion etched into his face, the doubt he was trying so hard to hide. If we do this, he said quietly, there's no going back. Matthias won't stop until one of us is dead or broken, and I can't guarantee which one it'll be. I know. And you're still willing to try? I didn't marry you to watch you fail. Her voice was hard. I married you to build something that lasts, and that means fighting for it. Dante's hand came up, fingers brushing her jaw. You're terrifying, you know that? Good. He kissed her then. Not gentle, not romantic. Just real and desperate and anchored in the certainty that whatever came next, they were facing it together. When he pulled back, his eyes were clearer, focused. Okay, he said. Let's go to war. Maakamt. The first step was information. Serafina spent the next 2 days buried in her father's network, calling in favors, asking questions, piecing together everything she could find about Matthias Carver, his businesses, his associates, his enemies. Everyone had enemies, even men who thought they were untouchable. What she found was a web of operations so complex it took her 12 hours just to map the surface level. Matthias controlled drugs, weapons, money laundering through a dozen legitimate businesses. He had politicians in his pocket, judges on his payroll, and enough muscle to make problems disappear before they even became problems. But he also had weaknesses. Small ones. Cracks in the foundation. A shipping company he co-owned with a man named Vincent Torres, who'd been skimming profits for the last 3 years. A real estate deal that had fallen through because of zoning violations Matthias had personally orchestrated by bribing city officials. A daughter who lived in California under a different name, trying to escape her father's legacy. Serafina wrote it all down, organized it, turned it into a weapon. Then she called Victor. He answered on the first ring. I was wondering when you'd reach out. I need your help. I assumed as much. What do you need? Everything you have on Vincent Torres, and I need a meeting with him, today. Victor was quiet for a moment. Torres works for Matthias. Getting him to turn will be difficult. Then we make it easy. Find his pressure point and press until he breaks. You sound like me. Is that a compliment? I'm not sure yet. Victor's voice shifted, went softer. Are you certain about this, Serafina? Once you cross this line, there's no pretending you're not part of this world anymore. I crossed that line the second I married Dante. I'm just deciding what kind of player I want to be. And what kind is that? The kind that wins. Victor laughed, short, sharp, genuinely amused. All right, I'll set up the meeting. Tonight, 9 o'clock, the warehouse on Pier 17. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. If this goes wrong, Matthias will come for all of us. And I don't plan on dying to protect your husband's empire. You won't have to. We'll see. The line went dead. Serafina sat there for a moment, phone still in her hand, feeling the weight of what she'd just set in motion settling over her like concrete. Dante appeared in the doorway. What did Victor say? He set up the meeting. Tonight. With Torres? Yes. Dante moved into the room, sat down across from her. You realize this could be a trap. Torres tells Matthias we're trying to flip him, and suddenly we're the ones getting buried. I know. And you still want to do this? Do you have a better plan? He didn't. They both knew it. Fine, Dante said, but I'm coming with you. That's not... I'm coming with you. His voice left no room for argument. You're my wife, my partner, and I'm not letting you walk into a meeting with one of Matthias's men alone. Serafina wanted to argue, wanted to tell him she could handle it herself, but the truth was, she didn't want to do this alone. Okay, she said. Relief flickered across his face. Okay. Osink. Pier 17 was exactly where you'd expect a clandestine meeting to happen. Dark, empty, smelling like salt water and rotting wood and old violence. Marcus drove them, pulling up to the warehouse just before 9. The building was massive, abandoned, windows broken out, graffiti covering the walls like scars. You sure about this? Marcus asked, eyes on Serafina in the rear-view mirror. No, but we're doing it anyway. Marcus nodded once. I'll be out here. You need me, you call. Thanks. They got out of the car, walked toward the entrance side by side. Dante's hand rested at the small of her back, not possessive, just present, grounding. Inside, the warehouse was cavernous, empty except for a few broken pallets and pools of water that reflected the single light hanging from the ceiling in the center of the space. Under that light stood 3 people. Victor, arms crossed, face unreadable. Vincent Torres, mid-40s, nervous energy, eyes darting between all of them like he was calculating escape routes. And someone Serafina didn't recognize. A woman, late 30s, beautiful in a hard, sharp way. She stood next to Victor like she belonged there. Who's that? Serafina asked quietly. Elena Voss, Dante murmured. She runs information. If you need to know something about someone in the city, you go to her. Why is she here? Because your father doesn't do anything without insurance. They approached the group. Victor nodded in greeting but didn't smile. Vincent Torres meets Serafina Rourke and Dante Rourke. Torres looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. I don't know why I'm here. You're here because you've been stealing from Matthias Carver for 3 years, Serafina said. And we have proof. Torres's face went white. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. She pulled out her phone, showed him the bank statements, the wire transfers, the offshore accounts he thought were hidden. You've skimmed almost $2 million, and if Matthias finds out, you're a dead man. He won't find out. I've been careful. Not careful enough. Dante stepped forward. We found it in 48 hours. How long do you think it'll take Matthias once someone points him in the right direction? Torres's breathing went shallow. What do you want? We want you to help us take him down. Are you insane? He'll kill me. He'll kill you anyway once he figures out you've been stealing from him, Serafina said. At least this way you have a chance to survive. What kind of chance? The kind where you give us everything you know about his operations, his suppliers, his weak points, his secrets, and in exchange we make sure that when Matthias falls, you're far away from the blast radius. Torres looked between them, eyes wild. You can't take down Matthias. No one can. We can if you help us. And if I say no? Elena Voss spoke for the first time, voice like cold water. Then those bank statements get delivered to Matthias tomorrow morning, along with photos of you meeting with Victor Vale's daughter and Dante Rourke. How do you think he'll interpret that? Torres made a strangled sound. He was trapped, and he knew it. Fine, he said finally. What do you need to know? V? The information Torres gave them was a roadmap to Matthias's empire, shell companies, money laundering routes, the names of judges and politicians on his payroll, the locations of his warehouses, the schedule of his shipments. But the most valuable piece of information was simpler. Matthias was hosting a private event in 3 days, a gathering of every major player on the north side, business leaders, crime lords, people who owed him favors or feared him enough to show up when summoned. It was invitation only, closed doors, heavy security, the kind of event where power was consolidated and deals were made, and anyone who wasn't invited knew exactly where they stood. He does this twice a year, Torres explained. It's a show of force, a reminder that he controls the north side. And you're invited? Dante asked. Always. Good. Then you're going to get us in. Torres's eyes went wide. Are you crazy? Security will be everywhere. They'll know you don't belong. Not if we're your guests. Matthias will kill me if he finds out. Matthias is going to kill you anyway, Serafina interrupted. At least this way, you're useful first. Torres looked like he might vomit, but he nodded. 3 days, he said. The Astoria Hotel, 8 o'clock, formal dress. And for the love of God, don't do anything stupid. Define stupid, Dante said. Torres didn't laugh. Look, the next 3 days passed in a blur of planning. Serafina and Dante worked through every scenario, every contingency, every possible way this could go wrong. They brought in Victor's people, Elena Voss's network, even Carmen, who showed up at the penthouse with a bottle of whiskey and a look that said she thought they'd lost their minds. You're walking into a room full of Matthias Carver's people, Carmen said, pouring drinks. What exactly is the plan? We expose him, Serafina said, in front of everyone, prove that he's not untouchable. How? We have evidence of bribery, money laundering, fraud. We have Torres ready to testify. We have Elena's sources confirming everything. We present it all at once, in front of his entire network, and watch his empire collapse. Carmen drank her whiskey in one swallow. You realize he'll kill you for this? He'll try. That's not reassuring. It's not supposed to be. Carmen looked at Dante. And you're okay with this? No, Dante said honestly. But I'm done running. I'm done letting Matthias dictate my life, so we end it, one way or another. Carmen shook her head. You're both insane. Probably, Serafina agreed, but we're insane together. Carmen poured another drink. Then I guess I'm coming with you. No. Don't argue. You need someone watching your back. And despite my better judgment, I care whether you live or die. She raised her glass. To insanity. May it at least be memorable. They drank. And Serafina tried not to think about all the ways this could end. The night of the event, Serafina stood in front of the mirror in Dante's bedroom, adjusting the dress she'd chosen. Red this time. Not black. Red like a warning. Red like blood. It fit her like armor, sleek, elegant, deadly. Dante appeared behind her, already dressed in a dark suit, eyes meeting hers in the mirror. You look terrifying, he said. Good. That's the point. He moved closer, hands settling on her shoulders. Last chance to back out. Are you backing out? No? Then neither am I. He turned her to face him, hands framing her face. I need you to promise me something. What? If this goes wrong, if Matthias comes for us, you run, you get out, you don't try to save me. Dante, promise me. She looked up at him, saw the fear underneath the determination, the love underneath the fear. I promise, she lied. He knew she was lying. He kissed her anyway. And then they walked out together into a night that would either save them or destroy them. The Astoria Hotel was everything Serafina expected. Opulent, excessive. The kind of place where money moved in rivers and power sat at tables carved from marble and mahogany. Torres met them at the entrance, looking like a man headed to his own execution. This is a terrible idea, he muttered. Noted, Dante said. They walked in together, Torres in front, Dante and Serafina behind him, Carmen trailing at a careful distance. Security checked their names against the list. Torres vouched for them. They were waved through. The ballroom was massive, crystal chandeliers, tables laden with food and expensive liquor, men in suits and women in dresses that cost more than most people made in a year. And at the center of it all, standing near the bar like a king holding court, was Matthias Carver. He saw them immediately. His expression didn't change. But something shifted in his posture. Recognition, calculation. He excused himself from the conversation he was having and walked toward them. Serafina's pulse kicked up, but she kept her face neutral. Dante Rourke, Matthias said, voice pleasant. I didn't expect to see you here. I'm full of surprises. Apparently, Matthias's eyes slid to Serafina. And the lovely Mrs. Rourke. How are you enjoying married life? It has its challenges. I'm sure it does. He smiled, cold, sharp. Especially when your husband owes debts he can't pay. He doesn't owe you anything, Serafina said, so you keep saying. And yet here you are. In my territory, at my event. Why is that? We came to talk. About? About the war you started and how we're going to end it. Matthias's smile widened. This should be entertaining. Please, by all means, talk. Serafina glanced at Dante. He nodded once. She pulled out her phone, opened the file Elena had compiled, turned the screen toward Matthias. This is documentation of every bribe you've paid in the last 10 years, every official you've bought, every law you've broken, and we have copies ready to go to every federal agency with jurisdiction unless you call off your assault on Dante's operations. Matthias looked at the phone, then back at her. Then he laughed. It was genuine, amused, the kind of laugh that made her blood run cold. You think I'm afraid of federal agencies? He said. You think documentation scares me? It should. It doesn't, because half the people in this room have similar files on me, and the other half are too afraid to do anything with them. He leaned closer. You're playing a game you don't understand, Mrs. Rourke. This isn't about evidence or leverage. This is about power, and you don't have any. Then what do I have? Desperation, which is why you're here, threatening me in front of my guests, hoping I'll be embarrassed enough to back down. Matthias's voice went cold. I won't. In fact, I'm going to make an example of you, both of you, so everyone in this city understands what happens when you challenge me. He raised his hand. Security moved immediately, 3 men in dark suits, hands inside their jackets. Dante stepped in front of Serafina. Don't. Or what? Matthias asked. Or this. The lights went out. All of them. Every chandelier, every lamp. The entire ballroom plunged into darkness. Screams erupted, people stumbling, glass breaking, and then a voice cut through the chaos, amplified, projected through speakers Serafina didn't know were there. Elena Voss's voice. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Elena Voss. Some of you know me. The rest of you should, because for the last 10 years, I've been collecting information on everyone in this room, and tonight, I'm sharing it. The screens mounted on the walls flickered to life, not showing Matthias's files, showing everyone's, bank statements, wire transfers, photos of meetings that were supposed to be secret, recordings of conversations that should never have been recorded. Every person in that room had their worst secrets displayed in high definition, including Matthias. The lights came back on. Chaos, people shouting, people running, people pulling out phones trying to figure out who to call, how to contain the damage. Matthias stood frozen, face pale, staring at the screens, at his own empire being torn apart in real time. Dante grabbed Serafina's hand. Time to go. They ran. Through the ballroom. Past security that was too busy dealing with panicked guests to stop them. Out into the lobby, toward the exit. Behind them, Matthias's voice roared over the noise. Find them! Now! They burst through the doors, into the night air. Marcus was waiting, car already running. They dove into the back seat. Drive! Dante shouted. Marcus didn't ask questions, just floored it. As the hotel disappeared behind them, Serafina looked back, saw figures spilling out of the entrance, heard sirens in the distance. Did it work? She asked. Dante was on his phone reading something Elena had just sent. His face broke into a smile. Real, relieved, almost disbelieving. It worked, he said. Federal agents just showed up at the hotel. Someone tipped them off about the recordings. Matthias is being detained for questioning. Serafina's breath left her in a rush. They'd done it. They'd actually done it. What about Torres? She asked. Already on a plane to Mexico. Elena made sure of it. And us? Dante pulled her close, kissed her forehead. We're free. The fallout took weeks. Matthias Carver was arrested, charged with racketeering, bribery, money laundering, and a dozen other crimes that would keep him in federal custody for the rest of his life. His empire collapsed overnight, associates scrambling to save themselves, businesses folding, territory dissolving like smoke. Dante reclaimed his shipping routes, his suppliers, his reputation. Richard Lang quietly ended Adrian's consulting contract and sent a very polite email congratulating Dante on the waterfront project moving forward as planned. Adrian disappeared. Last Carmen heard, he was working at a regional bank in Ohio. Monica had broken off the engagement. Everything Serafina had wanted when she'd walked out of that courthouse 6 weeks ago had come true. Adrian was destroyed. Dante was safe. And she was standing at the center of an empire she'd helped build. But sitting in Dante's penthouse one night, 3 weeks after Matthias's arrest, Watching the city lights flicker in the darkness, she felt something she hadn't expected. Empty. Not sad. Just empty. Dante found her there, brought her a glass of wine, sat down beside her. "You okay?" he asked. "I don't know. Talk to me." She set the glass down, looked at him. "I thought revenge would feel different. I thought destroying Adrian would make me feel powerful. But it just feels hollow." "That's because revenge isn't about power. It's about pain. And pain doesn't go away just because you pass it to someone else. So what do I do with it?" "You let it go." "How?" Dante took her hand, laced their fingers together. "You build something new, something that isn't about what you lost, something that's about what you're creating." "And what are we creating?" "I don't know yet, but I want to find out. With you." Serafina looked down at their joined hands, at the black diamond ring that no longer felt like a symbol of revenge, but something else entirely. A choice. Her choice. "Okay," she said quietly. "Okay? Okay. Let's build something new." Dante smiled, pulled her close, and they sat there in the darkness, two people who'd survived a war they'd started, trying to figure out what peace looked like. Bate. 6 months later, Serafina stood in her father's study, looking at the man who'd set all of this in motion. Victor was older now, or maybe she was just seeing him differently. Less as the untouchable crime lord and more as a man who'd done terrible things to survive in a terrible world. "You wanted to see me?" she asked. "I did." Victor gestured to the chair across from him. "Sit." She sat. He poured 2 glasses of whiskey, handed her one. "You've done well," he said. "Better than I expected." "Is that a compliment?" "It's a fact." He leaned back, studied her. "Matthias is gone. Dante's empire is stronger than ever. You've proven yourself in ways I wasn't sure you could. And I'm stepping back." Serafina's breath caught. "What?" "I'm not retiring, but I'm delegating, giving more control to people I trust, and I want you to take over the Eastern operations." "Victor." "You've earned it. You're smart. You're ruthless when you need to be. And you understand that power isn't about violence. It's about strategy." "I don't want your empire." "I'm not offering my empire. I'm offering partnership. You run the East. I keep the North. We work together. Build something that lasts." Serafina looked at the whiskey in her hand, at the amber liquid catching the light. A year ago, she would have said no, would have run, would have done anything to avoid becoming what her father was. But a year ago, she'd been married to Adrian, living a lie, pretending she could escape the world she was born into. Now she was married to Dante, living a truth, understanding that escape wasn't possible, but survival was. "I'll think about it," she said. Victor smiled. "That's all I ask." That night, Serafina told Dante about her father's offer. They were in bed, lights off, city sprawled beneath them like a glittering wound. "What did you say?" Dante asked. "That I'd think about it." "And have you?" "Yes." "And?" She rolled over to face him, saw his face in the darkness, all sharp lines and quiet strength. "I think I want to do it," she admitted. "Not because my father asked, but because I'm tired of pretending I'm not good at this. I'm tired of apologizing for being who I am." "And who are you?" "I'm Victor Vale's daughter. I'm Dante Rourke's wife. I'm a woman who destroyed her ex-husband's life and dismantled a crime empire in 6 weeks. She took a breath. "I'm terrifying. And I'm done pretending I'm not." Dante's hand came up, cupped her face. "Then be terrifying. Build an empire. Take over the East Side. I'll stand with you." "You're not worried I'll become my father?" "No. Because you're also the woman who cried when we watched that documentary about shelter dogs. Who brings coffee to Marcus every morning because you know he doesn't sleep enough. Who called Carmen twice last week just to make sure she was okay." His thumb brushed her cheekbone. "You're not your father, Serafina. You're better. Because you know how to be ruthless without losing yourself." Her throat tightened. "What if I'm wrong? What if I become something I hate? Then I'll tell you, and you'll listen. Because that's what partners do." She kissed him, slow, deep, grateful. When she pulled back, she whispered, "I love you." It was the first time she'd said it, the first time she'd let herself feel it. Dante's eyes went soft. "I know. I've known since you threatened to destroy Richard Lang in his own conference room." Despite everything, she laughed. "That's when you knew?" "That's when I knew you were mine. For real. Not because of some arrangement or strategy, but because you chose to fight for us. I'll always choose us." "Good. Because I'm not letting you go." His voice went quiet. "Ever." They held each other in the darkness, two people who'd been broken and rebuilt, who'd survived a war they'd started and emerged stronger for it. And somewhere in the distance, the city kept breathing, kept moving, kept waiting to see what they'd do next. Yes. 1 year later, Serafina stood on the rooftop of Dante's building, looking out over the city that had tried to destroy her and failed. The east side was hers now. Every territory, every operation, every deal that happened in the shadows between legitimate business and organized crime. She'd built it carefully, methodically, taking what her father had started and making it better, cleaner, more efficient. People feared her, but they also respected her, and that she'd learned was worth more than anything. Dante appeared behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist, rested his chin on her shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "About how far we've come." "Regrets?" "No." She leaned back into him. "You?" "Only that I waited 3 years to marry you instead of doing it the first time I saw you." She smiled. "I wasn't ready then. And now? Now I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." They stood there in the fading light, watching the sun set over a city that belonged to both of them, knowing that whatever came next, whatever wars, whatever betrayals, whatever challenges the future held, they'd face it together. Serafina Vale had walked into a courthouse a year ago and signed her name on divorce papers. She'd walked out Serafina Rourke, and she'd never looked back, because looking back meant seeing the woman she used to be, the woman who'd been small, afraid, apologetic. That woman was gone. In her place stood someone harder, sharper, more dangerous, someone who'd chosen power over safety, partnership over loneliness, truth over illusion, someone who'd learned that survival in this world meant accepting who you were and refusing to apologize for it. The city trembled under neon rain, but Serafina no longer trembled with it. She stood above it all, hand in hand with the man who'd waited for her, leading an empire she'd built from blood and fire and sheer force of will. And when people whispered her name now, it wasn't with pity, it was with fear and respect. And the knowledge that Serafina Rourke was not a woman to be underestimated. Not anymore. Not ever again.